Linda Hazzard, Starvation Doctor. The basis of another wild Timesuck ride because this story is so disturbing. It could easily be adapted into some kind of torture porn based on a true story horror flick, and you wouldn't have to dramatize much, if anything, about it to make it scary. Linda was an early 20th century swindler who literally starved her patients to death by promoting an extreme and cruel method of a supposed cure-all health rejuvenation known as the fasting cure. The so-called fasting specialist was not actually a doctor, although she clung to that title. She'd obtained a license to practice medicine in Washington state through a legal and poorly thought-out loophole that allowed some alternative medicine practitioners, read snake oil salesmen and saleswomen with no formal medical degrees, to obtain a medical license. Dr. Hazzard put her patients through extreme fasts that could last for months, where they would be fed nothing more than vegetable broth or fruit. They'd also receive daily, sometimes hour-plus long enemas, some sort of strange pummeling that she claimed was a healing massage, plus other nonsense that did nothing to make them feel better. Linda had published a book called The Fasting for the Cure of Disease, which sadly was published around the world and read by many, and it brought a bunch of patients to her Seattle office for treatment. She claimed fasting could cure the body of any and all illnesses, anything from chronic stomach problems to cancer. She built up her Seattle practice to the point she was able to create a sanitarium in Olalla, Washington, a little community just across the Puget Sound from Seattle. She named it Wilderness Heights, but once locals saw that her patients were skin and bones and frequently dying, they aptly renamed it Starvation Heights. Many, many patients died under Linda's care. We don't know the full number, but she wasn't arrested until 1911. Not until 4 years after she had made it to Washington state, when a wealthy British woman named Claire Williamson died of starvation at her sanitarium, and her sister Dora would have died as well were it not for the help of her childhood nanny, who came to her rescue all the way from Australia. Today we will learn about the natural hygiene movement that directly influenced and inspired Linda's quackery, how she became a fasting specialist, the scandals that followed her throughout her life, and the terrible case of her brutally starving and imprisoning the Williamson sisters, which exposed her deadly malpractice. All this and more in today's Happy Thanksgiving. Be thankful that you're eating turkey or mashed potatoes and pumpkin pie or fucking whatever. Just not merely taking a few sips of asparagus broth delivered to you by a wild-eyed, sadistic, maniacal fake doctor who has you so weak with hunger you're literally physically unable to walk out of her house of horrors edition of Timesuck.
This is Michael McDonald, and you're listening to Timesuck.
You're listening to Timesuck.
Well, happy Monday, and welcome back to the Cult of the Curious. I'm Dan Cummins, Suck Nasty. Someone trying to keep kids off of drugs. Hollywood and Speed Bump executive producer. And you are listening to Timesuck. Hail Nimrod, hail Lucifina, praise be to Good Boy Bojangles, and glory be to Triple M. No announcements today other than Happy Thanksgiving. I really think today's story is going to help you appreciate whatever grub you get to eat this year. If it's not better than what Linda Hazzard was feeding her victims/patients, wow, you are really not doing Thanksgiving right. Let's begin. Starting things off, as I mentioned up top, with an overview of the natural hygiene movement of the 19th century, which inspired Dr. Hazzard's methods. Again, she's not a doctor. Followed by a timeline of Linda's life and crimes against the followers of the fasting cure. Eating a whole food, vegetarian diet, fasting, of course, those are not new concepts. Probably not surprising to many of you. There were Hindu vegetarians in ancient India. There are writings on vegetarianism going at least as far back as the 5th century BCE in India. But in modern times in the West, a movement around vegetarianism didn't really start until the 19th century, when a group of pioneering physicians started the so-called natural hygiene movement and laid the foundation for the American Natural Hygiene Society, now known as the National Health Association, a nonprofit that continues to promote the benefits of a plant-based diet. So what kicked off this movement? In a word, disease. In the early 19th century, the leading causes of death for adults were malaria and tuberculosis. Children often died from measles, mumps, whooping cough as well. Kids got sick and died constantly back then. The death rate was significantly higher than it is today. An estimated 40 to 50% of children did not survive past the age of 5 in the 1800s in the U.S. The death rate for people under the age of 5 in the year 1800 specifically was about 463 deaths per 1,000 births. That's insane. Tough times being a parent back then. You're worried about when your kids were going to die as opposed to if. That's why so many people had so many kids back then. A large portion of them just never made it to adulthood. And the main cause of their deaths, again, infectious disease. But now the under 5 mortality rate has fallen to about 7 deaths per 1,000 births in the U.S. as of 2020. And the main cause of deaths for children under the age of 5 is accidents, drowning being the most common one. So keep an eye on them around the pool. It only makes sense that a lot of people wanted to figure out how to keep these diseases from killing kids back when kids died so frequently from disease. And of course, from killing adults as well. And back before we truly understood how viruses, bacteria, parasites, etc. spread disease, there was, of course, a lot of speculation as to how and why people got sick and died. Most people, kids and adults back in the 1800s, they ate a very meat-heavy diet. They didn't consume many fruits and or vegetables. Some people back then even believed fruits and veggies caused diseases like cholera. The physicians who were part of the natural hygiene movement, they rejected traditional remedies of the day for common diseases and ailments. They didn't think that fruit and veggies were the problem. They thought they were the solution, at least part of it. They also believed that oftentimes the deprivation of food, i.e. fasting, that was the answer to better health. Proponents of natural hygiene, or orthopathy, as it is sometimes called, believed that fasting, dieting, and other lifestyle measures were all that was necessary to prevent and treat disease. Staying healthy was all about, what you put into or did not put into your meat sack machine. Natural hygienists opposed drugs, fluoridation, immunization, most medical treatments, and endorsed fasting, food combining, and raw food or vegetarian diets as treatments. Some still do today. Orthopathy originated with Isaac Jennings in the 1820s, and Jennings was, as you might imagine, fucking weird. Hailing from Fairfield, Connecticut, he practiced conventional medicine early in his career, but then he became discouraged, and he started to think that medicine, just like medicine in general, was a complete waste of time. So, doctor, what kind of medicine do I need? Medicine? Ha! Only fools take medicine, son. Just eat some tomatoes. Stay away from hamburgers. And that gangrene should clear itself right up. To be fair, Jennings thought this long before the advent of antibiotics, so medicine was definitely not as good back then. But just to think that all of it was useless, that was a bit extreme. He started giving patients placebos in place of medicine without their knowledge, which is, a pretty major ethical violation. When that was discovered, and when he now outright began to refuse to prescribe any patients any medicine, he didn't get in trouble, didn't get any legal trouble, but he did get labeled as a quack. He came to believe that only nature could, quote, restore her damaged machinery and revitalize it. And he described medicine as a gross delusion. In 1839, he moved to Ohio, became a member of the board of trustees at Oberlin College. And in 1847, while still at the college, he wrote his first major book, sharing his no more medicine point of view, titled simply Medical Reform. Then 20 years later, in his 1867 book, The Tree of Life, he defined orthopathy as from orthos, right, true, erect, and pathos, affection. Nature is always upright, moving in the right direction. Nature is always rock hard. His system of orthopathy became known alternatively as the do-nothing cure, the do-nothing mode of treating disease, the let-alone plan, and the no-medicine plan. The doctor making a case for not needing doctors. So what's the best course of treatment, doctor? Same as it always is. Not a damn thing, buddy. Get out of here. I prescribe bathing, rest, and a vegetarian diet as part of his system. His no-medicine plan was based on the earlier idea of vitalism, a belief that nature does its best to keep the human system in health and to give the best opportunity for the vital forces to work. The patient must rest and not be disturbed by stupid shit like medicine. Dude also became a vocal part of the temperance movement, advocated abstaining from alcohol and all drugs, also abstaining from coffee and tea. He considered the use of coffee and tea to be, quote, a great sin in the church. Easy on that tea, ladies. God's going to smite that Earl Grey right out of your dirty tea-loving claws. This guy was like OG straight edge, but without a passion for good hardcore punk music. As crazy as his beliefs might sound, maybe there's something to them, because he is still alive today. Over 200 years old. Still going strong, right? No meds, no drugs. Full head of hair, mind still sharp, dick still hard. No, Jennings, of course, is not alive. But he did live until the age of 5 before he died of pneumonia. So he did live a long time. According to the National Health Association, a nonprofit that promotes the benefits of a plant-based diet again, neither Jennings or any of the subsequent leaders of the natural hygiene movement, quote, sought to cure disease. Instead, each of them recognized that overfeeding, overbathing, oversunning, overexercising, and aggravating patients in any way overtaxed and retarded them or prevented recovery. These pioneers abandoned all efforts to cure disease and employed complete rest and subsequent lifestyle changes in most conditions. Yeah, just fucking sleep off that virus. Which, does help. Not always, though. Not always enough. Reverend Dr. Sylvester Graham was one of the early leaders of this movement. Fuck yeah. Reverend Doctor. Been too long since we've had one of those. Graham is best known for inventing the graham cracker, a dull flour biscuit in 1829. My God, Lindsay and I love graham crackers. They're actually her go-to middle-of-the-night snack if she can't sleep. So I have to thank him for that. They are very tasty. A good graham cracker crust on some cherry or key lime pie, delightful. Sylvester Graham was born in July of 1794, the youngest of 17 children. Yeah, 17. His father passed away when he was 2 years old. His mother got sick around the same time. And then he was passed around from one relative's house to another. And one of those relatives ran a tavern where Graham was exposed to drunkenness, saw how it affected one's health, and because of that, he developed a lifelong disdain for alcohol, which makes sense. Then at the age of 16, Graham was believed to have contracted consumption, aka tuberculosis. He was sent out in the country, to work as a clerk in a store in upstate New York. His improved diet and different kind of lifestyle there allowed him to stay healthy. Also, a young nurse, Sarah Manchester Earl, helped nurse him back to health, and Graham fell in love with her, and they got married in 1824. Graham then became a Presbyterian minister in 1829, studied anatomy, physiology, general health, wrote a book on chastity, pretty random, showed an interest in moral and social reform. Soon after becoming a minister, he left the church, dedicated himself to the Pennsylvania Temperance Society. This guy was passionate about a lot of shit over the course of his life. He began to emphasize the risks of drinking, highlighted foods and beverages that should be avoided. And then he became passionate about fasting. Graham's so-called crusade for health and physiological reform began in 1830 through lectures and writings. He toured New England, spoke at times to crowds of thousands, and he emphasized that right living was better for health than doctors and or drugs. In the 1830s and 40s, Graham temperance houses were established in New York City, Boston, and Rochester, New York. The focus of these houses, which essentially operated as boutique hotels, was to follow what was now being called Grahamism, a lifestyle that combined a vegetarian diet with daily cold showers and sleeping on straw mattresses instead of feather beds. Okay. I didn't expect feathers to be a major health concern, but all right. Meals were never to have more than 3 items, and they were to be eaten exactly 6 hours apart at precisely the same time each day. This guy seems like he was fucking nuts. He had some serious problems when it came to hyperfixation. In 1837, Dr. William Alcott and Sylvester Graham co-founded the American Physiological Society, which emphasized scientific knowledge and collective work rather than a single leader. Also aligned with the principles of Grahamism. And Dr. Alcott was even weirder than Graham. He was a hardcore vegetarian who also opposed the consumption of alcohol, coffee, tea, and spices. Oh, yeah. Throw that salt and pepper straight in the trash. He strongly rejected ever using ginger, fennel, cardamom, nutmeg, coriander. I guess those were his least favorite spices, the most dangerous. He also believed that garlic, horseradish, molasses, and all sauces, all of them, were disgusting and indecent drugs. Fuck sauce. Also deplored conversation, which is too excitable. That's a quote of his. Conversation, which is too excitable. And, quote, the presence of exciting books. Okay. As someone, speaking for myself here, who's very likely on the spectrum, shit like this makes me wonder about how long autism has been around. I mean, probably always. We just didn't have, the word for it before. And these dudes, they just read to me as high-functioning autistic, like very intelligent people, intelligent enough to become doctors, help start health movements, but also neurodivergent enough to intensely hyperfixate on the weirdest shit. Anyway, these two fellows, the co-founders of the American Physiological Society, or APS, they taught anatomy and physiology, emphasized a strict vegetarian diet, no spices, no sauces, no exciting books, etc. All strangeness aside, their partnership was a big milestone for the vegetarian movement. The APS was likely the first exclusively vegetarian organization and the first natural hygiene organization in the U.S. Then in 1844, Dr. Russell Thacker Troll founded the Water Cure Institution in New York. This is another weirdo. He'd go on to author the first American vegan cookbook in 1874. Also hated spices, in addition to hating meat, alcohol, coffee, and tea, but mostly spices. He really didn't like spices at all. Felt they were truly dangerous to one's health. For most of his adult life, his very bland diet consisted of 2 meals a day, and those meals were composed of some exciting combination of graham bread, graham crackers, fruits, and nuts. No meat, no vegetables, no seasonings of any kind. Let's not dwell on that obsession. Let's dwell on his obsession with the healing power of water. A big hydrotherapy dude. Hydrotherapy, formerly known as hydropathy or the water cure, is a branch of alternative medicine that involves water for pain relief and treatment of disease. Okay, patients at the Water Cure Institution ate plain, very fucking bland, I'm sure, horrible tasting vegetarian meals while also undergoing hydrotherapy treatments centered around bathing and massage. The institution also had a gym, had a health food shop. Building on his watery ideas in 1845, Dr. Thomas Nichols and his wife, Mary Grove Nichols, began the Water Cure Journal and Herald of Reforms. Those 2 journals were devoted to physiology, hydropathy, and something called the laws of life. It's getting just more and more wackadoodle as we go through this. These journals included articles on individual and social health, education, hydrotherapy, of course, dress reform, okay, and women's rights. Mary founded a water cure clinic in New York that same year. In 1849, Dr. Russell Thacker Troll, Joel Shue, and Samuel R. Wells, they founded the American Hydropathic Society, which became the American Hygienic and Hydropathic Association of Physicians and Surgeons the following year. And then another leader of the natural hygiene movement and Linda Hazzard's biggest inspiration and influence was Edward Hooker Dewey, a late 19th century physician and pioneer of therapeutic fasting, a man now best known for his no breakfast plan. Dewey worked as a dispenser at a local pharmacy while in his 20s. He saw the ineffectiveness of the drugs available at the time. He graduated with a medical degree from the University of Michigan in 1864, became an assistant surgeon in the Army, entered private practice in 1866 in Pennsylvania. In 1877, Dewey witnessed a typhoid patient's complete recovery after a water-only fast. Not sure exactly how long they fasted for. But after that, he started to implement water fasts and stop prescribing medicine other than analgesics, aka pain relievers. Dewey published The True Science of Living in 1895 and the sequel, The No Breakfast Plan and The Fasting Cure in 1900. Both books were widely successful. By 1921, The No Breakfast Plan had gone through 3 editions and was translated into French and German. Fucking revolutionary. Don't eat breakfast. It should be noted that while Dewey's ideas were very popular in the early 20th century with the general public, they were not accepted at all by the overwhelming majority of medical experts of the day. In 1910, the British Medical Journal would describe Dewey as, quote, not an accurate or careful writer, noting a number of considerable medical errors in his book, The No Breakfast Plan and The Fasting Cure. The journal concluded that his ideas about fasting being a cure-all for disease was not supported by any evidence and was a, quote, foolish delusion. Dewey strongly advocated for just 2 meals a day, and he attributed literally all disease, all physiological problems to overeating. All disease comes from overeating. Did he just somehow overlook all the people like throughout history who, died of shit like scurvy, who succumbed to a number of other diseases as they starved? Like, modern history aside, history is not full of a lot of obese people. Right, that's new. There weren't a bunch of 300-pounders grunting it out along the Oregon Trail to settle the West. Medieval Europe, not full of peasants working the fields while standing on cankles. I'm almost 250 pounds right now, and I'm average for around where I live. Back in the 1600s, I would have been fucking gigantic. The world has mostly been full of poor, skinny people for the entirety of human existence. Because most poor people, again, until recent times, and the sedentary lifestyle that modern work affords us, work manual labor jobs, toiling away, burning calories, staying lean, not getting enough food, was much more of a problem than too much food. People used to be very fucking skinny, and they died all the time. This makes no sense. But Dewey's focus on the dangers of overeating led to him becoming a proponent of prolonged fasting. He believed fasting could not only cure pretty much all physical ailments, but also insanity and any other mental disorder. Yeah, totally. Starving people before they die, they become super healthy, and they have very clear, sound minds. Another one of Linda Hazzard's inspirations was John Harvey Kellogg, the founder of the Battle Creek Sanitarium up in Michigan, the inventor of Kellogg's cornflake cereal, although it would be his brother who would hone the recipe for mass production and do most of the Kellogg cereal empire building. We've talked about this crazy motherfucker before. I think we delved furthest into his insanity last year in Timesuck 398, the coconut cult episode. Remember when that wacky German, August Engelhardt, founded a small sect of sun worshippers who lived on a desert island and thought all they had to eat was coconuts and absorb the sun's rays to live long, healthy lives? Dude advocated for cocovorism. Only eat the coconut. It's good for your body. It's good for your soul. It's not. Not if you just eat nothing but that. Engelhardt became emaciated, lost his mind, and he died starving at the age of 43. Anyway, Kellogg was influenced by the work of Sylvester Graham. At the age of 12, John Harvey Kellogg was offered work by Ellen and James White, two of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He became their protege, did proofreading, editorial work for their journal Health, or How to Live, and The Health Reformer. Kellogg completed the medical course at Dr. Russell Thacker Troll's Hygiotherapeutic College. Doesn't sound like a real college. The goal of that institution was to develop a group of trained doctors for the Battle Creek Sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan, founded in 1866. Kellogg then graduated from NYU's Medical College, a real college, and a good one, in 1875. He became the chief medical officer of the Battle Creek Sanitarium, which was owned and operated by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, served as a spa, hydrotherapy institution, and hospital. Its principles were a vegetarian diet, abstinence from alcohol and tobacco, exercise, and sunbaths. Kellogg also an early proponent of germ theory. He related intestinal flora and the presence of bacteria in the intestines to health and disease, which is very smart. He was a very smart guy. He was, just like the others I've mentioned, a dude who also became hyperfixated on some extreme ideas. He managed the sanitarium from 1876 all the way to 1943, when he died at the age of 91. I will say a lot of these odd fuckers did live long lives, which does make me feel good about what they promoted. The Battle Creek Sanitarium flourished under his leadership, became one of the premier wellness destinations in the country before the Great Depression hit, and eventually forced the institution to sell assets to pay off debts, and then the Army would purchase it in 1942. A lot of weird stuff happened at that sanitarium that I talked about in the coconuts episode, like yogurt enemas. Oh yeah, get that yogurt up in that butt. Also, frequent water enemas, filling your butthole shed with several gallons of water at a time. Kellogg also infamously forbid masturbation at his sanitarium. I mean, no one's hated masturbation more than this fucking Kellogg guy. He found it to be very dangerous. He believed beating off or clit diddling led directly to poor digestion, memory loss, impaired vision, heart disease, epilepsy, insanity, and more. You just fucking jerk yourself crazy and blind. To keep his patients from beating their meat, he literally advocated wearing what was essentially a cock cage. He built a fucking cock cage. Lock that cock up. Don't let it out. But I've already covered that, so I won't keep rehashing that all here today. So what does this all establish? It establishes that Linda Hazzard, as crazy as the shit she did was, she didn't pull her beliefs out of thin air. She was one in a long line of dangerous quacks, some of whom were widely respected and highly educated, some of whom became quite wealthy, promoting their unorthodox and dangerous medical treatments. Linda Hazzard read the works of these physicians that I've gone over and eventually became a firm believer in fasting as a cure for any and all disease. She modeled her Olalla Sanitarium after Battle Creek somewhat. She had dreams of creating something greater, something that would make her one of the foremost medical specialists in the world. And her focus on fasting would get a lot of people killed and earn her the label of a serial killer, in addition to wellness advocate. Somewhere along the way, it does seem that her focus on health became more of a focus on killing wealthy clients and taking all their money. She may have begun with some noble intentions, but by the end, she didn't just get weird, she went full evil. Now let's look into her descent into depravity in today's Timesuck timeline.
Strap on those boots, soldier. We're marching down a Timesuck timeline.
Linda Laura Burfield, born December 18th, 1867 in Carver County, Minnesota. Linda, or Lana, as she was sometimes called when she was younger. The oldest of 7 children. Her mother was Susan Neal Burfield, a Canadian whose first husband had drowned when a Union boat he was on sank during the Civil War. Susan then remarried to Montgomery Burfield in 1869. Linda's father, Montgomery, had been born in Pennsylvania back in 1828. He was a corporal in the 9th Minnesota Infantry during the Civil War. In 1878, when Linda was 10, the family moved to Star Lake Township in Otter Tail County, Minnesota, home of comedian Chad Daniels. Don't hear that rural county come up in many stories. Montgomery worked at a local sawmill, and the Burfields ate a mostly vegetarian diet, only occasionally offered small amounts of meat. Susan never forced her children to eat the meat, and that, of course, likely influenced Linda's disdain for meat as an adult. She will later trace her interest in alternative medicine overall back to her childhood. Each year, Montgomery would pay a doctor to perform a checkup on all of his kids, which was not normal for the times, and Linda thought that was foolish, waste of money. None of them were sick, but her father believed that doctors could prevent future problems. And I'm not sure that they could do that then, but they certainly can now in many cases. The doctor convinced Montgomery and Susan that their children had intestinal parasites and prescribed blue mass pills for them, which caused both vomiting and diarrhea. Blue mass was terrible. It was a mercury-based treatment commonly used for syphilis from the 17th to the 19th centuries, also recommended for tuberculosis, constipation, toothaches, parasites, childbirth pains, and more. Just kind of a cure-all. It definitely was a form of snake oil. Former President Abe Lincoln took blue mass for chronic melancholia, aka just depression. Blue mass contained excessive amounts of mercury. A typical daily dose contained 100 times the daily limit set by the EPA today. Definitely quackery. Sadly, science is never perfect. At its best, it is the best that the present has to offer. It's always evolving as we collectively learn more as a species. And it was a lot less evolved back then than it is now. Back then, germ theory still had not been accepted. Penicillin was a long way from being discovered. Using disinfectants to keep people clean during surgeries still was not widely accepted. Modern medicine wasn't quite yet what we would consider modern. And a terrible decision to dole out blue mass helped push Linda from one form of quackery to another. Linda later wrote, "I now know what of course I could not then suspect, that this powerful poison did irreparable injury to my intestines, retarding and preventing their development and growth to such a degree that even to this day, I am compelled to resort to the enema daily." I don't know that the mercury led to your intestines not fully developing. She had no proof of that. Guessing maybe she just liked the way enemas felt. Some kind of anal fixation. She got hooked on hosing out her butthole. Supposedly, she would give herself daily enemas for most of her life. So much butt play. Just maybe not the sexy kind. But who knows? Maybe she did that kind too. At the age of 18, Linda married Irwin Alonzo Perry. Perry was born on November 13th, 1853 in Elgin, Illinois. 14 years older than she was, and the son of a wealthy pioneer. Not sure what kind of butt stuff he was into or not into. Sadly, don't have that information in sources. Linda was reluctant to get married, never truly loved him, which was common back then. Back then, marriages typically arranged by a woman's parents. Since few avenues of income generation were available to women back then, it was important to marry a man of means. At the time of her marriage, Linda was in poor health, which is crazy considering how much attention she was giving her butthole. Still, despite all the enemas, she couldn't keep much food down. And she lost multiple upper teeth, which she would then attribute to the prescription of calomel by some doctors. And she might have been right about that. Calomel could lead to softening of a person's gums and tooth decay. Calomel, more mercury. It's a mercury chloride mineral commonly used until the early 20th century, despite frequent mercury poisoning. Fucking old-timey folks, they loved their mercury. It was considered a miracle drug used for almost every disease and affliction, from ingrown toenails to cancer. High doses would cause cramping, vomiting, bloody diarrhea, which at the time was taken as a sign that the drug was purging the body of disease. "Are you throwing up and shitting blood?" "Yes." "Oh, excellent, great, that means it's working." In 1863, before Linda was born, the U.S. Army Surgeon General had actually forbade calomel from inclusion in Army medical supplies, and the use of calomel would die out during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Linda, in her early adulthood, now sought out a cure for problems caused by modern medicine. Linda and Irwin settled in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, home of my buddy Chad Daniels, and the two had children there. They had two children. Their son, Rollin, born in August 1889, and their daughter, Nina, born in March of 1891. Linda's father will die 5 years later, March 6, 1896. The poor guy was taking logs to the mill when the reach broke. Some logs pulled him under and crushed him. Damn. Crushed his skull specifically, just fucking flattened his head. Linda was devastated since she had been especially close to her dad. She'd later say she considered him the only completely honorable man she'd ever known. And now Linda's life will start to shift. 2 years later, in court filings, Linda will claim that her husband, Irwin, had abandoned her and the children on April 5th, 1898. She was now without support. Their divorce will not be finalized until the fall of 1902, when Linda was now allowed to give her maiden name back to herself and her children. But then, after she does that, she has her kids shipped off to live with Grandma Susan in Star Lake. Now single and free from raising her own children, Linda chose to pursue her career as a fasting specialist. Although Rollin would later reunite with his mother as a young adult, her daughter, Nina, would hold a grudge against Linda and be estranged from her mom for the rest of her life. And based on what we'll learn about Linda coming up, I'm guessing that Linda was a fucking monster of a mother. Many years later, Linda will only leave her daughter a single dollar in her will, which is pretty fucked up. Those who knew Linda always thought there was more to her divorce than she let on, that she had done something terrible to make Irwin leave, and I bet she did. Some also question why she left her kids with her mom. For Linda, the answer was always a woman with a greater purpose sets aside convention. And so she did, wrote Starvation Heights author and probably the biggest expert on Linda Hazzard in the world, Greg Olson. Linda now began studying osteopathy, intending to become a nurse. She later told her followers that she had come to the fast by treating herself in 1898, the year her husband abandoned her. She read The Gospel of Health by Dr. Edward Hooker Dewey. We met Dewey earlier, and it changed her life. She was inspired by the case of a typhoid patient who was seemingly cured by a 34-day fast. And she also embraced Dewey's no breakfast plan. Linda actually contacted Dewey, convinced him that she could carry on his teachings, and even though they didn't always agree on the course of treatment, particularly regarding internal baths, aka enemas, they would get along. She believed an enema was, quote, a necessary hygienic accessory of the fast, while Dr. Dewey had this crazy notion that one's bowels, should be allowed to function naturally as long as you're able to poop. So many nuts in this episode. Why would you ever argue that your bowels should not be allowed to function naturally? It cracks me up when people think they found like a weird cheat code or some life hack like this that just no one else had ever thought of. Like people have been shitting just fine for millennia. But they're like, Eureka! I figured out how to live a long, much healthier life. You need to wash your colon out every single day. Nothing ages and corrodes a person like letting your pooper poop on its own. Despite this pivotal poop disagreement, again, the two did remain close until Dewey's death in 1904. 1900, Linda opened up an office in downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota. Started to have a thriving practice. She put patients on a diet of nothing more than vegetable broth and juice paired with massage. Massage that was this thing that she came up with. It was just more like a beating, just hitting people. And of course, a lot of enemas. How many people died thanks to her treatments in Minneapolis is not known. Linda boasted to patients about the success of her fasting regimen, saying, quote, cases pronounced incurable by medical physicians recovered under the regimen I imposed, and the symptoms presented ranged from chronic constipation, diabetes, Bright's disease, and syphilis to paralysis. She could fucking cure everything. She could cure paralysis through fasting and enemas. Well, of course you haven't been able to move your arms or legs since you fell off the roof and broke your back, dear. You started eating too much after that accident, and your butthole froze up, and it froze your arms and legs. We need to get you to stop eating. Start power washing your bing-bing. You'll be river dancing around in no time. Linda also became a lecturer for the Women's Christian Temperance Union. She claimed in her speeches? She gave speeches. Guys, do you want to hear my speechy? She claimed that cancer, toothache, psoriasis, heart problems, tuberculosis, epilepsy, insanity, and more, they'd all been cured with her fasting methods. And so the woman looking for better treatments than the ones she had received growing up becomes an even worse snake oil saleswoman than the doctors that had given her that mercury. One case Linda loved to recount was that of Mrs. J.B. Barnett, a 65-year-old from Kansas City, Missouri. Mrs. Barnett had always suffered from, quote, chronic constipation and bilious attacks until she started fasting. Prior to her fast, she also suffered debilitating melancholia, resulting in suicidal tendencies. As written by Linda, on arrival, the 2-meal regime was immediately begun on the strictly vegetarian basis that the treatment is based upon. And by the way, the patient had been an enormous meat eater. A few days of this, and the meal was cut down to a little fruit. The last solid food given was a bowl of lima bean broth. Yum. After which the patient went 48 days until any solid food again was given, of which 45 days were absolute fast. Mrs. Barnett supposedly made a complete recovery from this extreme fast. Did she? Did her little skeleton body recover? 48 days with nothing more than what sounds like broth. That's a great way to get somebody killed. And speaking of getting people killed, Linda experienced her first of many patient deaths in 1902. If she hadn't already killed, people lost to the historical record. around the time her divorce was finalized. A coroner determined that the death was caused by starvation. He tried to have Linda prosecuted. However, ironically, because Linda was not licensed to practice medicine, she wasn't held liable for doling out health advice. So that's cool. Following this patient's death, Linda was evasive when investigators asked what was happening, to the victim's valuable rings that had gone missing. Did the snake oil saleswoman want her patient to die so she could get those rings? Or was she just an opportunist here who took the rings after the patient died? Will her opportunity here lead her to becoming a bit more reckless with the health of certain patients going forward? Because she definitely will. This is the start of a pattern of Linda treating clients of means, starving them, and then as they weaken both physically and mentally, robbing them. Despite this death, more patients keep coming. However, Linda's thriving practice in Minneapolis will soon be destroyed by one man, her future husband, Samuel Hazzard. And her downfall will become quite the scandal. Samuel Chrisman Hazzard, born June 18th, 1869 in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. He was an intelligent dude, natural leader, showed great promise in life, but also had a real inability to keep his dick in his pants. Sam entered West Point in June of 1889, graduated in June of 1893. He accepted an appointment as additional second lieutenant of the artillery. 3 months later, he married Agnes Headley, daughter of a boarding house keeper. Sam was praised for his command of French, Spanish, German, and Latin. Smart dude. He became West Point's instructor of modern languages in 1896. After 2 years, he accepted a promotion to the post of military adjutant. Adjutant. There we go. That word showing up again after the patent suck. Sam was living a good life. He was doing well financially, had high social standing, all while hiding the fact that he was continually cheating on his wife. It was easy for Sam to meet women because, he was considered a very handsome man, held a prestigious position, work-wise. Author Greg Olson provides a vivid description in his book of him, writing, clean shaven and with golden eyeglass frame gleaming, Samuel Hargrave was a gorgeous man. His head of dark, wavy hair was surely the envy of any woman. So thick, so shiny, his penetrating eyes promised both danger and devotion. Sam was recommended for a promotion to first lieutenant of artillery in April of 1899. He tried to stall his promotion and applied for a 3-month leave so he could continue to see his mistress, but his request was denied. Sam appealed by claiming his dad was, quote, stricken with total blindness. He wasn't, and now his delay was granted. But then that autumn, Sam's misdeed became known, and the scandal was so big he left New York and left his wife behind along with a stack of unpaid bills. So he's a grifty dude. Not the best integrity. He and Linda were made for each other. Sam headed to Chicago, where he now lived under the alias of Samuel Hargrave. And in 1902, Sam would meet his future wife, Viva Fitzpatrick, daughter of Joseph Fitzpatrick, an Iowa State senator and president of the First National Bank in Nevada, Iowa. Viva was twice divorced, told her parents she was going to Chicago to become a seamstress. Her true reasoning, per family gossip, was to find another suitor. In August of 1902, Viva was trying to find a streetcar in the rain when Sam Hargrave showed up, offered her an umbrella, introduced himself as an insurance salesman for the Chicago office of the American Credit Indemnity Company, and asked to call on her. They courted over the next several months, and Viva wanted to be Sam's wife. In February of 1903, Sam agreed to take an assignment at the Minneapolis office of American Credit. He would have Viva join him once he was financially secure, and Sam promised they would have a wedding soon. Viva arrived in March of 1903, and upon her arrival, Sam promptly took her to the court commissioner's office to get married, and their first few months of marriage were happy. Sam and Viva lived in a rented apartment owned by Frank and Kate Strong. Kate's husband had fallen ill, was being treated by none other than fasting specialist Linda Burfield. Linda visited the Strong household often, but the Hargraves had yet to meet her, or so Viva thought. That summer, Viva became suspicious that something wasn't right. William Tanner, the indemnity company's general manager, visited the apartment to check on Sam, who'd been ill. Tanner had suggested Sam take some time off work to get over his stubborn cold, but now he hadn't returned to work for about a week. Tanner was surprised when Viva answered the door instead of Sam, led him to a back bedroom where Sam was resting. Sam introduced Viva as his wife, and Viva was surprised that Tanner didn't already know about their marriage. Tanner was also surprised, considering he and Sam worked side by side every day. Sam said he had matters in the East he wanted to take care of before he made their marriage public, an excuse that read like bullshit. Then, several months later, Viva began to notice that Linda Butthole Washington Burfield seemed to show up everywhere Sam went. Sam was a frequent visitor at her office. He told Viva there was nothing romantic going on, that he merely planned on going into business with Linda. But Viva didn't buy it. Viva actually met Linda for the first time in October of 1903. The morning after their meeting, Viva received anonymous letters that contained, quote, vile innuendo. Butthole innuendo, perhaps? Was Linda luring Viva's husband away with butt play. Soon someone informed her that Sam was in love with Linda, that his marriage to Viva was a lie. Sam dismissed the notion as rubbish. He reassured his wife that his relationship with Linda was purely business, and the two kept seeing each other. On November 11th, 1903, Viva and Sam ate lunch at a Chinese restaurant in downtown Minneapolis, and during their lunch, witnesses observed Viva slapping her husband across the face. Why did she slap him? Probably had something to do with what happened later that same day, when Linda and Sam Hazzard, not Hargrave, were married by a minister in Linda's office in Minneapolis. And then Sam returned to his other wife, Viva, leaving Linda to spend her wedding night alone. Sam then visited Linda over the next few days, but spent each night with Viva. Then on November 15th, after Sam had not come home the night before, he shows up along with Viva's father. They both have grim expressions, and Sam tells her, "You are not my wife." He informed Viva that she was only his common-law wife and that there was no record of their marriage in St. Paul. He had tricked her into thinking they had been legally married. Can you imagine that happening to you? Finding out that your marriage is a sham? That your partner is just a complete con artist? Man, that'd fuck your world up. Viva's father confirmed that what Sam said was true. Her dad was the one who had found out and confronted Sam and dragged him to his daughter's place and made him tell her. Now Sam informed her he was legally married to Linda. The day after this confrontation, Sam quits his job with no notice, and now he and Linda plan to start a health center in Minneapolis that will make them both rich and famous, but Viva and her dad are determined to get revenge. Viva's dad used his political pull to have bigamy charges filed against Sam later that month. And as it turned out, Sam had never divorced his first wife, Agnes. So he was now legally married to 2 women, and he had 3 women all thinking he was their husband at the same time. Some people, crazy ways they needlessly complicate their lives. Sam's trial started on February 4th, 1904. It was the talk of the city, the courtroom full of spectators eager to see this drama unfold. He was found guilty February 9th, sentenced to 2 years in prison. The most damning evidence was the introduction of 19 letters between Sam and Viva. The triumphant Viva talked to the press following the trial, hinted at reconciliation. She declared she would not divorce Sam. Both she and Linda would visit him in jail, with Viva insisting that he tell Linda she was no longer welcome, but he wouldn't. This dude truly must have been like Brad Pitt, Idris Elba level handsome. And for all that, both these women still want him. Linda was heartbroken and outraged. She spoke to the newspaper reporters saying, "I married Mr. Hazzard because I loved him, and after he had sworn to me that he was not legally married to any other woman. If the law has declared our marriage illegal, it's my misfortune and nothing I could foresee. If Mr. Hazzard has chosen to state that he would marry the Iowa girl when released from prison, I have at least done what I could do to fulfill my marriage vows to love, honor, and cherish. I have done no more than any loyal woman would do for the man she loved. If I am to be left alone, I can bear it. But the distress and the affliction are enough to bear without having my every natural action the cause of unsympathetic comment in the public prints." She's so full of shit. She knew damn well that he was married to another woman when she began to have her affair with him. After the papers released Linda's statement, Sam made his only public comment saying, "If only I had left women alone, I would have been all right. As it is, I feel that I have only myself to blame. I played the fool, and now I'm going to take the consequences with as good a grace as I can. As for the future, I'm going to try and live up to the poet's advice, build upon resolve and not upon the structure of the future." Okay. Sam was released from prison October 30th, 1905. Although Linda had denounced Sam and said publicly that their relationship was over. She supposed he never saw another man during his time in prison, and she held out hope he would come back to her. Viva, meanwhile, had been living with her parents in Iowa, but returned to Minneapolis for Sam's release. Oh, I'm sure her parents were fucking thrilled with that choice. Despite she and her dad leading the charge to put him in prison, she had supported him while he was incarcerated the entire time, and Sam had promised her the entire time that he was going to prove everyone wrong once he got out and be a faithful husband to her. But then when he was released, he did not go to Viva. He went to Linda. Fucking snake. Right? How embarrassing for Viva. So by 1907, the 2 self-serving, grifty snakes, Linda and Sam Hazzard, 2 people clearly not prone to fucking over and greatly deceiving others, now they've moved to Washington State to start over. According to author Greg Olson, What happened in the year between Minneapolis and Seattle would remain unclear. Neither Sam nor Linda would ever say much about it. Most assumed they had arrived together, Sam following Linda after she was, quote, called to the Pacific coast where some of her family lived. Yeah, it does seem that Linda made it there first. Back in the spring of 1906, Linda had began leasing an office in what is now the Northern Bank and Trust Building at 4th and Pike in downtown Seattle. Linda had no medical degree, but a loophole in Washington at the time that I mentioned, the cold open, that grandfathered in some practitioners of alternative medicine without degrees, probably the real reason she moved to Washington, allowed her to be licensed to practice medicine, but only in the state of Washington. So she was now legally able to advertise herself as Dr. Linda Hazzard, fasting specialist, which she did enthusiastically. Linda later wrote, soon after this, I began to encounter organized persecution from medical sources, aided by newspapers controlled by the profession. Such deaths as occurred under my care received the widest publicity, and the accounts written concerning them were distorted and filled with implication, innuendo, and threat. A classic grifter's mentality here. They're being persecuted by the establishment because they won't sign off on the establishment's ways. I mean, in this case, it's like, yeah, of course you were persecuted by the establishment. The establishment knows that what you're doing is shady as fuck, very dangerous. Despite the negative publicity, Linda's practice thrived. Desperate people, right, make desperate choices. And when it comes to one's health, it's easy to feel desperate. While her main office was in Seattle, Linda and Sam also bought 40 acres across the Puget Sound in Olalla, and Linda will commute back and forth on a ferry each day, which sounds delightful. Truly, I've known people who have made the ferry commute to downtown Seattle for work and then lived in some little idyllic kind of island setting. Seems pretty awesome. Olalla was a little unincorporated community back then, just like it is today. Not sure how many people lived there back then. There's no census records because it wasn't a town. It sounds like it was closer to being a proper town back then when Linda lived there than it is now. All I can find on the map is, today is just a little market on the water, a brewery, a winery, and a bunch of expensive homes and not much else. Very pretty area. Linda named her acreage Wilderness Heights and planned on building a sanitarium that would rival, perhaps surpass, the Kellogg Institution back at Battle Creek. At first, locals embraced Linda's alternative medicine until more and more of her patients started to die. After that, Wilderness Heights would earn the derisive nickname of Starvation Heights. Linda's first known Washington victim was Daisy Maud Haglund, a Norwegian woman. After a 50-day fast, my fucking God, 50 days, without much more than broth, Daisy died February 26, 1908, at 38 years old. She left behind her 3-year-old son, Ivar, who later became the founder and owner of Ivar's Clam Chowder, the Seattle-based seafood chain. I think it's just actually called Ivar's, but I associate it with clam chowder. It is famous for its clam chowder. It's so random. I fucking love Ivar's Clam Chowder. Sadly, being increasingly lactose intolerant for the last 20 or so years has made enjoying cream-based clam chowder impossible for me. No enema needed to thoroughly clean out my bowels. A cup of clam chowder more than does that trick. But clam chowder used to be, I would say, my top 5 favorite foods. I still think about it sometimes. I ate at Ivar's so many times. It's so fucking good. What a strange connection. That the Ivar founder's mother starved to death by Linda Hazzard. Perfect last name for her, by the way. She was so hazardous. To be fair to Linda in this instance, following autopsy, it was determined that Ivar's mother had been suffering from stomach cancer, possibly for years, that she would have died from stomach cancer even without Hazzard's treatment, and her official cause of death was reported as stomach cancer. But most historians looking into this feel like, yes, cancer would have eventually killed her, but starvation's what actually killed her. Although his wife had died under Linda's care, John Ivar Haglund continued taking his son 3 times a week for treatments at Linda's office for a while. Yeah, the future chowder baron, once a childhood patient of Linda's. Later that year, Linda's patient, Ida Wilcox, died September 26, 1908, after a 47-day fast. No cancer with her, just starvation. 1908, also the year Linda published her most well-known book, Fasting for the Cure of Disease, which will attract so many future patients as it gets printed around the world. This book is terrifying. Let me share a few excerpts to help familiarize us all with her teachings. From Chapter 1, Fasting. Fasting is defined as follows: the voluntary denial of food to a system which is diseased, and which, because of disease, does not require nourishment until rested, cleansed, and eager again to take up labor of digestion. Then and not till then is food supplied. Then and not till then does starvation begin. Relieving physical illness by voluntarily withholding food is based upon the conclusion of the argument herein that matter, what are the various names attributed to the forms in which disease, this is a little bit nonsense, is manifest there, is but one cause for all of its out and inward signs. The sole source of ills is impure blood. The cause of this blood is imperfect digestion. So Linda believed, or at least claimed to believe, that the source of all ills could be traced back to imperfect digestion. And now check out the opening sentence of chapter 2. Death from starvation frequently occurs when the body is overfed. I'm sorry, what? What was that? You starve to death when you eat too much? Okay. Then a couple of paragraphs later, another disturbing sentence. Death from starvation cannot take place in a fast when organic disease is absent. Yeah, totally. You literally can't starve to death if you're not diseased. All right? If you're healthy, you can live on like an orange a day or some shit for the rest of your very long, very skinny life. What a great way for Linda to rationalize away anybody who dies under her care. It wasn't the starvation that killed them. No, it was the disease. Always disease, never a prolonged extreme calorie deficit. Then a little later in the same chapter on starvation, she writes, disease may be induced through mental states and in accidental conditions that compel abstinence from food, such as shipwreck, mine disasters, and the like. Digestive function is paralyzed primarily by mental apprehension due to the situation. If death occurs in these circumstances within several days or weeks, it must be attributed not to want of nourishment, but to the effect of general emotional exhaustion upon physical force. What the fuck? Those people trapped in the mine with no food for weeks, they didn't starve to death because they had literally nothing to eat. No, they starved to death because they got stressed out about not having anything to eat and over being, trapped underground with no way out. They let the disease of stress starve them. This lady was such a wackadoodle. Before moving on, chapter 8 is titled The Enema. Of course it is. Can't not talk a lot about enemas when you're Linda Butthole Hazzard. Its opening sentence reads as follows. In fasting for the cure of disease, the enema is a necessary daily adjunct, and while the fast is in progress, it should be taken on rising and before retiring. So that's cool. While you're fasting, i.e. starving, I know it's not quite as simple as that, but if you fast for a long time, it is starving. You should also power wash your colon twice a day. Will you be really, really skinny? Yes, of course. Will you be in pain as your muscles atrophy and your organs shut down? Yes. But you can bet your bottom dollar that your bottom dollar is going to be oh so shiny and squeaky clean. And that's cool. Last thing before I move forward in this timeline, later on in the enema chapter, Linda explains why it's so necessary, writing, the necessity for the use of the enema would cease to exist were all food ingested perfectly transformed and entirely consumed in tissue building. But continued excess in supply creates imperfect functioning of the digestive organs. Natural bowel movements depend upon food perfectly digested or chemically changed, and the waste products from this process are always fully eliminated. Imperfect digestion causes imperfect elimination, which is the one source of septic poisoning and of subsequent disease. But so long as food ingested is cooked food and soft food, and so long as it is not properly masticated, just so long will assistance be required to evacuate the content of the bowels. Okay, so I guess if you could just chew more effectively, if your food was always perfectly soft and or cooked, and if you ate it all in a perfect fashion, then you wouldn't need to blast food waste out of your butthole. Question, Linda. How did we humans survive for so long, back when we didn't have kitchens or enemas? Crazy that the human species survived for millions of years just fine without Linda's wise butthole guidance. Now let's move on. There were more patient deaths, of course, in 1909. There were fucking constant patient deaths. Blanche B. Tyndall, age not listed in the sources, died June 18th, 1909, after 28 days of fasting. The 39-year-old Viola Heaton died March 24th, 1909, under Linda's supervision. Length of her fast not listed. Viola's husband, Oscar, would later speak out against Linda. He believed that Linda held a powerful, unnatural cult leader-like control over her patients. Although he pleaded with Viola to see a real doctor, he believed she succumbed to Linda's will. Oscar told reporters, quote, when Mrs. Hazzard was giving my wife the starvation treatment, I must say that I felt this influence. I did not want Mrs. Hazzard to take it up at any time, but through other women she was treating, she prevailed on my wife to take it up. She has a way of surrounding her patients with adherents of the starvation theory and sending others who are converts to the theory and are also fasting to talk with sufferers so that it is almost impossible to get to them. When I finally did order her out and insisted on a regular physician, it was too late. Another patient, Eugene Stanley Wakeland, died by suicide, maybe. November 9th, 1909, after a long fast. He was definitely killed by a .38 caliber bullet to the head. His decomposing body was found on Wilderness Heights property. Some would later think that somebody else shot him. We'll hear more about the Wakeland matter further on in the timeline. March 28th, 1910, 25-year-old Earl Edward Erdman, Triple E, a civil engineer from Seattle, died of starvation the same afternoon he was hospitalized at Seattle General. Erdman had kept a diary documenting Linda's fasting regimen in the preceding weeks, which gave insight into the details of his treatment. So these are excerpts from that diary. February 1, saw Dr. Hazzard and began treatment this date. No breakfast. Mashed soup dinner, mashed soup supper. Not sure what kind of mashed soup he ate, but the term mashed soup likely refers to puree. So not a broth, but also not much more than a broth. One with no meat, certainly. Probably no dairy. Most likely just a vegetable broth with some pureed vegetables in it. February 5 through 7, 1 orange breakfast, mashed soup dinner, mashed soup supper. February 8, 1 orange breakfast, mashed soup dinner, mashed soup supper. February 9 through 11, 1 orange breakfast, strained soup dinner, strained soup supper. Okay, going from mashed to strained now, getting real close to a broth. Basically a broth. February 12, 1 orange breakfast, 1 orange dinner, 1 orange supper. What the fuck? Dude had 3 oranges that day, nothing else. The average orange contains 45 calories, so he had 135 total calories. Average adult male needs approximately 2,200 to 2,800 calories per day just to maintain the same weight. So he was at quite the deficit here. February 13, 2 orange breakfasts. Oh, wow. Really going for it. But no dinner and no supper. So actually down to 90 calories worth of oranges that day. February 14, Happy Valentine's Day. 1 cup of strained tomato broth at 6 p.m. Oh, no more oranges. We're definitely in broth territory now. Strained tomato broth. A cup of that's about 70 calories. February 15, 1 cup hot strained tomato soup, night and morning. February 16, 1 cup hot strained tomato soup, a.m. and p.m. Slept better last night. Head quite dizzy. Eyes yellow streaked and red. He's not doing well. February 17, ate 3 oranges today. Okay, easy, fatty. What is it? What is this, a fast or a buffet? February 19, he skipped a date. He's too tired to, he's probably fucking too sick and weak to write on February 18th. February 19th, he writes, called on Dr. Dawson today at his home. Slept well Saturday night. So I guess he's maybe getting a second opinion there. February 20, 8 strained juice of 2 small oranges at 10 a.m. Dizzy all day. 8 strained juice of 2 small oranges at 5 p.m. So now he doesn't even get a proper orange, just some strained orange juice. February 21, ate 1 cup settled and strained tomato broth. Backache today below ribs. Dude's body's breaking down. February 22, ate juice of 2 small oranges at 10 a.m. Backache today in right side, just below ribs. Only getting juice from small oranges now. February 23, slept but little last night. Ate 2 small oranges at 9 a.m. Went after milk and felt very bad. Ate 2 small oranges at 6 p.m. His body can't handle milk, right? Digesting milk now, it's so fucked up. February 24, slept better Wednesday night. Kind of frontal headache in a.m. Ate 2 small oranges, 10 a.m. Ate 1.5 cups hot tomato soup at 6 p.m. Heart hit up to 95 beats a minute and sweat considerable. February 25, slept pretty well Thursday night, ate 1.5 cups tomato broth, 11 a.m. Ate 1.5 cups tomato broth, 6 p.m. Pain in right below ribs. February 26, did not sleep so very well Friday night. Pain in right side below ribs and back. Pain quit in night. Ate 1.5 cups tomato broth at 10:45 a.m. Ate 2.5 small oranges at 4:30 p.m. Felt better afternoon than for the last week. For the next month, as he wasted away, he gave up on his diary. Probably just too weak and confused to write entries. After the death of Erdman, the Seattle Daily Times published an article titled, Woman, quote, MD, kills another patient. And yet, because this is considered legal treatment, the police can do nothing about it. And more patients continue coming to Linda seeking a cure. On May 12, 1910, Lewis Ellsworth Rader, who actually served in the Washington House of Representatives, died after a 29-day fast at the age of 46. Linda had treated Rader at the Outlook Hotel. Health inspectors had tried to convince him to leave on multiple occasions, but he refused. Right before he died, Linda took him to a secret location. He was 5'11" and weighed less than 100 pounds at the time of his death. God damn. I was very skinny in high school for a while. About 6 feet tall and 135 pounds my junior year. I think that was my skinniest. Just could not put on weight after growing really quick. When I look at pictures of myself at that weight, like I truly look sick. Like I remember, I think when Lindsay saw a picture of me from that time, the first time, she was like, whew, like she recoiled. Like I looked gaunt. I would have looked absolutely skeletal. Like I would have looked terrifying at 100 pounds. Rader's death also documented in papers. The Wenatchee Daily World published a brief notice under the title Starvation Treatment Killed. E. Rader, formerly prominent in state politics and one-time member of the legislature, died today after fasting for 29 days. He was suffering from stomach trouble and, on the advice of a woman physician, was given the starvation treatment. Friends in the city health committee endeavored to induce him to take nourishment, but he flatly refused. Can't believe they constantly refer to as the woman physician. Just like so derogatory. Seattle's health director, I mean, she should be slammed for being a starvation doctor, but not for being female. Seattle's health director said he couldn't intervene because Linda was licensed and her patients were willing participants. The health director did keep an eye on her, though, because he could intervene if she started to kill kids with starvation. Linda's patient, Maud Whitney, died July 20th, 1910. No age or length of fast listed. According to the website HistoryLink, the pattern was becoming distressingly familiar. Patients were put up in Seattle hotels or in cabins on Dr. Hazzard's Olalla property. Autopsy reports listed starvation as the cause of death, unless Linda Hazzard performed the autopsy, in which case anything but starvation would appear as the cause of death. So shifty. Finally, in September of 1910, Linda would begin correspondence with the Williamson sisters, whose tragic case will bring an end to Starvation Heights. British sisters Dorothea and Claire Williamson were staying at the Empress Hotel in Victoria, British Columbia, as part of their trip around the world that September. Dora, as she preferred to be called, and Claire were the wealthy orphan daughters of an English officer in the Imperial Army Medical Service. Dora had been born in modern-day Tiruchirappalli, India. Tiruchirappalli. Claire born in London 4 years later. Their parents, George and Rosalita Williamson. George had been injured in India, which is why they returned to England, and then he strained his heart while walking up a steep hill near their English home. Not ideal timing when Rosalita became pregnant with Claire, since she already had a sick husband to take care of. Then George died shortly after Claire was born in 1877, at just the age of 39, likely from a heart attack, it seems. Then Rosalita died when Claire was 14 and Dora was 18. Her exact cause of death not known, but Claire and Dora always said she died of a broken heart. She never fully recovered from the death of her husband. It seemed that the Williamson family was plagued by tragedy. The sisters had two sisters, their only other siblings, Ethel and Gertrude, and they both died of scarlet fever at young ages. So by the time these two crossed paths with Linda, Claire and Dora only had each other. The closest person they had to a parental figure was their nursemaid, aka nanny, Margaret Conway, who had begun working for the Williamsons when she was just 20 years old. She'd known Dora and Claire since Dora was just a year old. She loved the sisters like they were her own daughters, and their close bond remained strong even when the sisters reached adulthood. And that bond will later save one of the sisters' lives. I should note that when they met Dr. Hazzard, Claire and Dora were both fairly healthy. Neurotic, but healthy. As a child, Claire had a delicate constitution and suffered from a nervous exhaustion, which manifested in, quote, morbid cravings for food. Doctors prescribed small meals every 2 hours and a full meal at bedtime. So, she was used to an unorthodox diet. Claire later said, "I was very nervous and continually crying, which I've been told was due to the circumstances of my birth." Neither one of the girls would ever work, and it seems that while they always felt like they were suffering from something, it didn't seem like they often actually had something. For example, a cousin later said, "Being rich is the cause of all their problems. Claire and Dorothea are ill because they can afford to be ill." That's pretty funny. So well stated, and immediately makes me think of like affluent and neurotic people I've met over the years, where I've thought like, are you sick? Or do you just have too much time on your hands to dwell on shit because you have almost zero responsibilities in life? Growing up, the girls attended private boarding schools in Switzerland, England, and France. They were well-traveled, but the, quote, exhibited a childlike naivete and innocence that sometimes left them a target of manipulation by those with dubious intentions. Hardly a week went by when there wasn't a banker or an investment expert with phony assurances that he had a plan for their money. Encounters with those who would do them financial harm only served to draw them closer to each other. At 32 and 27, respectively, Claire and Dora were still both unmarried. Actually, flip that around, Dora and Claire there, since Dora's the older one, 32 and 27. Very unusual for the time for them to both be unmarried. They preferred to spend their time traveling the world together rather than to be courted, maybe in part because they were, so wary of people coming after their money. And most of that money had come from their grandfather. Their grandfather, Charles Williamson, had left them a fortune worth the equivalent of around $5 million in today's money. Most of it was in British government stock from Australia, as well as land holdings in Canada, the U.S., England, and Australia. And they also inherited whatever their parents had when both their parents died, and they each got an annual stipend. Although the sisters lived a luxurious lifestyle, they felt unsettled. They sought happiness, peace, and most of all, a sense of well-being. They were seeking a cure for their chronic ailments, real or perceived, when they met Linda. Dora believed she suffered from swollen glands and acute rheumatic pains in her knees. An osteopath in London had told Claire that her uterus had dropped back onto her spine and her ovaries were inflamed. Not sure if that's what she actually had, but, it's possible. Did you know that a woman's uterus can fall out, aka prolapse? I wish I didn't fucking know that. I forgot about it and I looked into it. I was like, oh God. I did an image search of prolapsed uteruses. I not only got nauseous, but I honestly felt like a bit dizzy. Do not go looking for that. Unless you have a very strong stomach. Oh my God, is it intense. I would honestly rather look at crime scene photos than ever see that again. It made my knees weak. No way I could be a surgeon. 1910, the sisters had traveled from Liverpool, England to Quebec, Canada by ship, then over to Toronto via train before heading further west to Vancouver. At each stop, they visited distant relatives. And on September 2nd, 1910, the sisters saw a newspaper advertisement in a Seattle daily newspaper for Dr. Linda Butthole Hazzard's clinic. She didn't advertise it as Butthole Hazzard, but, Claire wrote a letter to Dr. Butthole requesting her wonderful book, Fasting for the Cure of Disease. Claire also wrote that they had not been feeling well. The Dora had been on a partial fast since August 26, had only eaten fruit, with the exception of 2 small meals. And she noted that, quote, Dora's eyes just now are very bloodshot and seem to be eliminating a good deal of matter. I love how they thought, bloodshot eyes were a good thing. Her skin is very yellow and her eyes are bloodshot, so it's working. She wrote her period was due 10 days ago. She has a very sharp pain over the right temple whenever she moves. Oh yeah, it's all the disease being pushed out. That's good. Oh, are you coughing up blood? Do you have a headache? Are your eyes red? Okay, you're doing great. 5 days later, the sisters received the book, and in it, Linda described herself as the only licensed fasting specialist in the entire world. No one knows what I know. I alone hold the keys to health. Always a red flag. The sisters read passages, such as the ones I went over earlier, about, all disease being rooted in improper diet and digestion, how fasting and enemas are crucial to good health. Linda preached the importance of resting the digestive system to allow impurities to pass from the body. The natural cleansing process would strengthen the body, she claimed. According to Linda, a fresh foundation is there to work upon, a new and thoroughly cleansed body, ready to take up its labors, and with proper hygienic and dietetic care to carry them on indefinitely. The fasting cure greatly appealed to the sisters who had, always been vegetarians, had long embraced natural remedies over Western medicine. I should note that they were both already very thin, not good for people about to embark on an extreme and prolonged fast. Within the book was a brochure for the Hazzard Institute of Natural Therapeutics out in the countryside of Washington in Olalla. Sounded like a wonderful place of rest and healing. The sisters now decided to winter in California, then head back up to Seattle in the spring to work with Dr. Butthole. After that, they had planned to part ways. Claire was going to go to London, take a kindergarten instruction course, be a teacher, while Dora would travel to Australia to visit a distant aunt and, just figure shit out from there. Unfortunately, that would never happen. The sisters arrived in Riverside, California in November of 1910. They booked rooms at the Arrowwood Hotel, took mud baths, enjoyed massage, drank gallons of water as part of some water therapy. What a life. Dora was feeling refreshed, but Claire still felt off and continued corresponding with Dr. Hazzard, eager to try her fasting cure. November 28th, 1910, Claire received a letter from the Hazzard Institute of Natural Therapeutics. Linda had wrote to Claire, "My experience tells me at once that the fast properly entered into and conducted will relieve permanently the conditions you describe as existing in your own case at present. I think I may speak without undue egotism in placing the matter before you because of the years that I have been advocating and practicing this method of cure. So in short, fucking 100%. You come up here, you're going to feel great. Definitely. For sure. Dr. Hazzard glossed over a treatment plan that would involve enemas, of course, always enemas, and fasting, and also hot baths and internal massages. Not totally sure what Linda meant by an internal massage, but in general, an internal massage is someone taking a lubed finger or fingers and sticking them in your rectum and or vagina, usually vagina, gently loosening up those pelvic floor muscles. And while there is benefit to this, it's actually a legit thing. You can imagine, I'm sure, how easily it could be to use that incorrectly. December 13th, Dr. Hazzard informed Claire that the sanitarium was not ready yet, though, even though she'd advertised it, but it would be opening to receive new patients in just a few weeks. She encouraged the sisters to start giving themselves daily enemas. I think themselves, not each other. Let's pretend she encouraged the sisters to give each other daily enemas. You put this tube up to your sister's butthole, and then she'll put that tube up your butthole, and it's going to be great. Just stare at each other, just sit in the bathtub, and stare in each other's eyes with tubes up your buttholes. And also have a diet of vegetable broth. As they were finalizing plans for their trip to Seattle, Claire and Dora made a pact that they would not tell any of their relatives about going to the sanitarium. They believed their relatives would not understand their butthole and starvation-centric interests. On January 14th, 1911, the sisters informed Dr. Butthole that Dora was feeling great, and Claire was feeling more like herself. However, Claire found the diet of cornbread and broth difficult to follow outside of a sanitarium setting. She'd like more guidance. However, later that month, they are disappointed to find out the sanitarium is still not quite ready. But Linda wrote that it was possible they could start treatment in Seattle and then just be transferred to Olalla. The $60 per patient per month fee would include daily office visits. Linda wrote, "It is possible, I think, from your description of both of your cases, that there will be no excessive weakness or difficulty in the conduct of the fast. Hence, you should both be able throughout to come to me daily." On January 27th, Claire informed Linda they were coming to Seattle and asked for the addresses of suitable apartments that would be near Dr. Butthole's downtown Seattle office. They stopped in Portland, Oregon on the way up from California to visit their uncle, John Herbert. Did not mention the visit to Seattle to him. Claire wrote in a letter dated February 7th, 1911, "Unfortunately, we cannot tell them we are going to stop in Seattle to do a fast, as already they disapprove of our way of living. In fact, we are not mentioning it to anyone." Dora was content to enjoy their leisurely trip up north, but Claire was frustrated and, quote, talked about her stomach discomfort with a kind of regularity that bordered on annoying. Claire wrote, "I would gladly stop eating, as I feel as if I have had a liver attack and get constant indigestion. So I'm counting the days until we arrive in Seattle, and I can eliminate this matter collected in me." Oh, boy. The sisters met Linda for the first time February 27th, 1911, at her office in the Northern Bank and Trust building in Seattle. Linda told Dora and Claire she was from western Minnesota, that her dad was American, her mom was Canadian and English, and she told him, "I was raised in a home of refinement, under sheltered and orthodox methods." She explained that she became a nurse first, then became an osteopath in 1898. The sisters were a little surprised that Linda did not perform an exam or ask them any further questions about their health. All she did was outline their treatment plan, a plan based on what they had told her. And that is fucking nuts. Imagine a doctor, imagine a doctor behaving that way today. You just think you have cancer, and after telling them that, they immediately set you up with chemotherapy. Like no blood work, no MRI, no ultrasound, no x-rays, no tests of any kind. They just take your word for it. "Doctor, I think I have a brain tumor." Whoa, that's bad. Let's wheel you into the surgical center now. Open that noggin up. Dig in there. Following meeting Linda, the two women were taken into another room for their first treatment. They were asked to take off their outer layers and lie on a table. Claire went first, was pummeled about on the back, head, and forehead. Was supposed to be a massage, but something that seemed sloppy and needlessly painful. After the massage, Linda declared that the girls would undergo 3 or 4 weeks of fasting paired with vigorous exercise. And she promised them, "You shall be in complete and perfect health." They would be given a single cup of tomato broth twice a day with a fingernail-sized pat of butter added to it. No salt, no seasonings. Later, they would have asparagus broth and a bit of orange juice in the mornings. They were also to take vigorous walks several times a day because, quote, "Your bodies are full of poison. You need to walk it out." No matter how difficult it may be as the fast continues, you must persevere and walk. My God. They'll be taking in almost no calories. A cup of asparagus broth has 17 calories. You might as well just drink water. And they'll be very active and burning a ton of calories. If you operate at a caloric deficit of around 500 calories a day, you should lose a pound per week. They were working with a caloric deficit, I'm guessing here, but probably between, 3 and 5 times that amount if they did in fact walk a couple hours a day. Dr. Butthole said that she would see them in her office Monday through Friday for enemas and her weird massage. You simply cannot pump enough water into your colon if you want to feel better. Stop fucking around. Lay down, lube up. Stick this health hose up your ass, you fucking idiot. As they got to know Linda over the following days, she regaled the sisters with tales of miraculous cures. Of course she did. One story was that of Edward Anderson, whom she said she treated in 1905. She said Anderson was 17 years old when his mom learned he was slowly dying. His mom was aware of Linda's controversial reputation, but she was out of options. So she called Linda to their home in December. And Dr. Butthole said, I found him suffering from a characteristic case of inflammatory rheumatism and in a most precarious state. The boy's physician had thrown up his hands and had told the distracted mother that the disease had affected the heart and that it was only a matter of a day or two at the most. All that he could do was to ease the pain with opiates and give the young man a pleasant passage into eternity. The mother had heard of my work through one of my former patients and as a last resort came to me. Linda continued, the foundation I had to work on was flimsy in all respects. For the 5 weeks since the beginning of the attack were worse than lost, at least to me. I found that in the 2 weeks just preceding, the heart action had been stimulated with doses of digitalis and strychnine. Food had been forced on the rebellious stomach as many times daily as the boy could be induced to swallow it. And when the pain had become too great, or delirium had intervened, codeine and other opiates had been used unsparingly. In addition to all this, in 5 days' time, 2 quarts of brandy had been poured into the drugged interior. The boy could neither lie down nor sit up, and his position was a painful compromise. Edward was put on an immediate fast, naturally. Linda then massaged his body, guessing that included the young man's butthole, and used an enema to eliminate toxins from his bowels daily. A lot of butt therapy. Within an hour, she said his pulse and temperature were back to normal. Oh, wow. He seemed to really like Dr. Butthole's butt therapy. After 9 days, Edward broke his fast with tomato broth. As he regained strength, his food was increased, and he seemed like a miracle. Linda wrote about the case 1 month from the date of my first call. The boy came across town to my office, a distance of 6 miles by car, with a walk of 4 blocks at the end of the line. Within a few days, judicious building up exercises were begun, and in 6 weeks from the 19th of December, the patient was back at work in one of those downtown business houses. So far as I can learn, he has already adhered strictly to the diet and exercise devised. And when I last saw him, he had developed into a sturdy, robust youth with seemingly perfect health. The sisters underwent the first part of their treatment at the Buena Vista Apartments in Seattle. They lived in a 2-bedroom unit with a bathroom and a small kitchen. Not that they needed it. They would actually never use it. Also, they could talk to each other from their rooms, but they were not supposed to see each other per Linda's orders. Not sure how seeing each other affected the treatment. Damn it, Dora, I was doing so well. My stomach was so empty and my asshole was squeaky clean, but then you peeked at me, and now I'm bloated. Now my butt stinks. I'm very unhealthy again. Each day they hoped they would feel better, but they, of course, quickly started to feel the effects of extreme hunger, of starvation. But they thought that was good. Dora confided in her sister, though we feel weak, we are getting better. I notice I'm getting cleaner. I am too, Claire replied. But probably like, I am too! She had yelled across her apartment. I know I've joked about butts a lot, but I do think by getting cleaner, they were talking about what was coming out of their butts during enemas. Of course, you're going to start having less poop come out. The water's going to look a little clearer if you're putting almost nothing into your system. But that, as we now know, does not mean you're getting healthier. It just means that you're fucking starving. At some point, Dora developed a stronger belief in the treatment than she originally had. She was weary but euphoric. Starting that first week, it became normal for the sisters to faint, which they'd never done before. They were briefly tended to by a nurse named Sarah Robinson, but then Sarah quit because the work was not to her liking. It probably freaked her out. They also saw Linda's friend James Webb, who brought them books on spiritualism and theosophy to read. Oh, fuck yeah, bro. Theosophy has entered the chat. Hello, Madam Helena Blavatsky's wackadoodle bullshit. Now, we touched on her beliefs a ton of times over the years. The precursor to a lot of extreme New Age beliefs. Lost root races, ancient magical civilizations, interdimensional beings living in Mount Shasta, ancient aliens living in the mountains of Tibet. battles between powerful wizards in the lost city of Atlantis, so many vibrations, so many frequencies, so much crazy. Of course, Linda was also into that shit. According to author Olson's book on all this, over time, more than the exercise, more than the scant nourishment of the fast, the internal bath became the most taxing ordeal. The sisters were required to take 6 quarts of warm water after stripping down to their chemises and doubling up in what the doctor termed the knee-chest position. At the beginning of the fast, the internal bath took just under half an hour. As the days passed, the duration increased. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, all day. The enemas were a painful blur. Jesus. Dora even fainted in the midst of one. After that, canvas yardage was stretched over the rim of the bathtub in a hammock, which allowed the sisters to continue even when supporting their own weight. Knee-chest style was too difficult. My God. They're too exhausted to kneel in a fetal position. Dr. Hazzard insisted that these marathon enemas would, quote, eliminate the poisons. You know what? I'm not an enema expert, but this feels dangerous to me. Very little fluid going into their mouths. So much fluid going into their buttholes. For hours a day sometimes. It feels backwards. Linda gave the sisters the name and number of Nellie Sherman, who they could call on if they felt they needed more care, i.e. more enemas. Dora never have enough enemas. Dora was the first to call Nellie Sherman. She was frightened over how Claire had grown so weak. 40-year-old Nellie Sherman had been an alternative medicine nurse for 14 years, having graduated from the homeopathic hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. She'd moved to Seattle after her marriage to an abusive man named Frank Otis ended in 1908. She wanted to get clear across the country from Frank. Within 3 weeks of their wedding, Frank had beaten Nellie, accused her of cheating. Nellie met Linda on the morning ferry from Olalla to Seattle when Nellie was traveling from West Seattle to Olalla to care for her family. One morning, Linda told Nellie about her plans for a sanitarium at Wilderness Heights. She said she needed people who believed in natural remedies to help her. Nellie was eager and shared similar beliefs. The two totally hit it off, and Nellie started working for Dr. Butthole. She and Linda shared an interest in horoscopes and spiritual matters. Nellie considered herself a medium. They talked a lot about root races and wizards and shit. Nellie agreed to take on a case involving 2 sisters, but she emphasized that she had other commitments. And Linda reassured her, quote, "They're in a bad way. I'm afraid it shouldn't be long." So the sisters were pretty healthy before they started fasting. Now Dr. Butthole seems resolved to just let them die. Or she's actively killing them with her methods to get their money. When Dora called for the first time, Nellie told her that she was too busy to take on her case. Nora pleaded with her, and then Nellie reluctantly agreed to come to Buena Vista. Meanwhile, neighbor Mary Fields had been hearing and observing the girl's decline. She was actually having trouble sleeping due to the constant and disturbing groaning and moaning coming from the girl's apartment. The sisters are fucking miserable, right? They're in pain. They're dying. The change in the sisters' appearance was jarring to other residents at the Buena Vista apartments. They were quickly reduced to little more than skin and bones. Mrs. Fields recalled that she was repulsed by Claire's smile, saying, quote, her lips were so thin. When she smiled, her upper lip would draw back and her lower lip would be a line. Also, according to Mrs. Fields, she, Claire, became so weak she could hardly walk even with Miss Sherman's assistance. She would assist herself by placing her hand against the wall. She had to pass my door unless she went down a flight of stairs and come up another way, and she would have to put her hand against the wall as a child walking. And the last time I saw her in the hall, it was very distressing to me to talk to her. She was so thin. Clara Corrigan moved into the Buena Vista apartments a few weeks after the sisters. And one afternoon, acting on Nellie Sherman's invitation to drop in and meet them, she saw Claire on a couch with Dr. Hazzard bent over her. Nellie explained that Claire was undergoing osteopathic massage treatments. Clara was disturbed by the way Dr. Hazzard was beating on Claire's frail body and remarked, "That seems a very severe treatment." Dr. Hazzard replied, "On the contrary, it does her good to promote circulation." Claire became so upset by what she saw that she left. She later returned to the apartment after she was sure Dr. Hazzard was gone. Dr. Hazzard freaked her out. She offered Claire a sponge bath and asked her if the treatment hurt, and Claire responded, "Oh, no, it is the most beautiful treatment." However, during the sponge bath, Claire could see red patches on Claire's body, bruises forming from where Linda had hit her. Claire returned the next evening. Although she was disturbed by the sight of their emaciated bodies, she wanted to help them. Nurse Sherman asked her to stay because she had matters downtown. Nellie reported that Claire was not eating, but Dora could have 1 tablespoon of orange juice every hour. 7 calories. She was getting 7 calories an hour. Even if she had a tablespoon of juice every hour for 24 hours straight, she still wouldn't get the calories found in a single candy bar, not even close. She might as well have just drank water. After Nellie left, Clara asked Claire why she wasn't eating, and Claire replied, "It causes me distress about now, though it will pass. The poison is still in my system. I simply can't tolerate food." No, she can't tolerate food because she's suffering from refeeding syndrome, in all likelihood. It's something that people struggling with anorexia deal with. It's caused by low stores of certain micronutrients in your body due to starving yourself. The most common nutrients involved are phosphorus, potassium, and magnesium. And when you begin refeeding, eating food again, or eating more food after going too long without eating enough food, your cells demand these electrolytes to metabolize the food. But now they don't have them. And this causes a severe and dangerous shift in your body's chemistry. The electrolytes you still have move rapidly from your blood into your cells, but because you don't have enough, this shift leaves low levels of them in your blood, and low electrolyte levels in your blood can cause a variety of complications, such as muscle weakness, trouble breathing, double vision, seizures, heart weakness, and eventually slipping into a coma, suffering organ failure, and fucking dying. By mid-March, Dr. Butthole was becoming more persistent in her inquiries into the sisters' personal and business matters now. Oh, shady. When they were too weak to write, Linda arranged to have her attorney's secretary take dictation. She pressed for financial information and asked to store their valuables. At first, the sisters declined because they saw no need, but Linda was insistent. Around the same time, Nellie Sherman knocked on Clara Corrigan's door, saying she wanted to show her something in the girls' apartment. She took Clara to the bath and held up a pail of water. Inside the liquid was milky white dinosaur bones.
Dinosaur bones, yeah, we want to see them. Dinosaur bones, yeah, where can we see them?
I meant to say particles instead of dinosaur bones. Milky white particles is what I was trying to say. They'd never seen these particles before. They didn't know what they could be. I don't know what they could be. What the fuck were those particles? Nothing good, I'm sure. Maybe, I don't know, mucus from their digestive lining or something. The next evening, Nellie returned to Clara's apartment and expressed her concern that Claire was growing weaker every day. Claire had fasted for over 30 days now. Dora had fasted for over 40 days now. And they had both been thin to begin with. She wasn't sure they were going to live much longer. Dora was showing signs of delirium. Claire was so weak she was bedbound. March 29th, Nellie went to the office of Dr. August Brewer, who already knew the sisters, a woman who was an actual medical doctor. She had treated Claire the previous summer in July of 1910, and Dr. Brewer instructed Nellie to fucking feed the sisters immediately, or they would die. But they refused to eat, unless Linda told them they could. And Dr. Butthole didn't think these two living skeletons needed stuff like sandwiches, omelets, maybe a little bit of peanut butter, something. The doctor told Nellie that what Linda was doing was wrong, that she didn't approve of Linda's treatments, that they were dangerous, deadly even. Dorothea Keck, she ran a small grocery store 2 blocks from Buena Vista Apartments. She knew Nellie Sherman, knew that the sisters were patients in Nellie's, and she would later testify that Nellie only purchased tomatoes and asparagus. You fucking cannot live on tomatoes and asparagus alone. Not for long. What a drawn-out, painful way to die. Nellie showed up for the last time, April 19th. She called a few days before to request that the last bill would be made ready as they were transferring the sisters now to the Olalla Sanitarium. Mrs. Keck asked about the sisters, and Nellie said she was worried. She added, "If I knew what I was undertaking with the Williamson girls, I would never take another case like that. It's not worth it." On April 21st, 1911, the sisters were transferred to the Olalla Sanitarium via ambulance, being taken into the belly of the beast when they're already too weak to walk. The bedbound sisters waited on the dock for 2 full hours before Linda's attorney, John Arthur, appeared with papers for Claire to sign. She now wrote what she thought was a fucking letter to her childhood nurse, Margaret Conway. She's delirious. What she actually wrote was an update to her will. Claire was so weak, she could hardly speak. She needed help writing. Right? This is so dark. Fuck John Arthur, that lawyer is well in this. Claire wrote, "Dear Margaret, in the event of my death, my books and jewels are hereby given to you for disposition by you according to your own judgment and discretion. This is intended as a bequest to you, as if contained in a formal will, and to be treated as a codicil to my will already made. I also hereby give £25 per year to the Hazzard Institute of Natural Therapeutics in Olalla, Kitsap County, State of Washington, USA. To be also treated as a codicil to my said will. My remains are to be cremated under the charge and direction of Linda Burfield Hazzard of said Olalla. This letter is also intended as directions to my solicitors in London." Once in Olalla, the girls were moved into the soon-to-be infamous Wilderness Heights Sanitarium. They were too weak to appreciate the natural beauty of their surroundings. Claire and Dora were literally carried into beds in separate ends of the attic, being treated like they're already ghosts now. Go ahead and get a head start on haunting this place, girls. Keep moaning in pain. Try and shuffle across the floor. That's creepy. At the sanitarium, the sisters met 22-year-old Roland Burfield, Linda's son. Roland was a company player and actor at several Seattle stock houses, but struggled to get lead roles, so he assisted Mommy at the sanitarium. Also denied Claire food when she asked, per his mother's orders. This complicit little rat. Linda insisted the sisters remain separated. Their nurses were told the girls needed to focus all their attention on their treatments. Dora was told that Claire was too weak to see her, and Claire was told that Dora was too delirious to see her. These women are in hell. One night, Dora managed to crawl on her hands and knees over to her sister's bedside, but then Claire insisted she had to leave. As Dora, then crawled back to her bed, the skin on her knees rubbed off. They are ghouls at this point. They're fucking ghouls. This is truly starting to feel like a horror movie. While the sisters were starving to death in the attic, their old nurse, Margaret Conway, received the following cablegram. Come SS Marama, May 8th, first class. Claire. She assumed their previous travels had come to an end, and Claire was sending word that Dora was coming on the Marama to Australia. Margaret didn't think much of it at first, but then she started to question the message. Why would Claire specifically write that she was in first class? Margaret called the steamship company and learned that the Marama was not sailing to Sydney, but was sailing away from Sydney. Because she knew the sisters so well, Margaret assumed that the message was actually a call for help, that Claire was asking her to come to them. And Margaret knew she needed to get on a ship. Pretty incredible that she figured all that out from very few words. And she was right. Somehow, Claire had snuck that message out. A week later, the earliest she could leave, Margaret was on board the Marama heading to British Columbia. She arrived in Canada not far from Seattle, May 23rd, 1911. I love this lady. She loved these girls so much, girls who were now grown women, that she jumped on a ship and traveled literally halfway around the world on nothing more than a hunch to make sure they were okay. May we all be lucky enough to have someone care about us like Margaret Conway cared about the Williamson sisters. Dr. Butthole's husband and fellow grifter Handsome Sam met Margaret at the harbor in Vancouver, took her to the Seattle office. There she was informed that sadly Claire had died less than a week earlier, May 19th, and that Dora had gone insane. Margaret was taken to the mortuary, shown an embalmed body. She was told the body was Claire's, but Claire didn't believe it. She didn't recognize her. Claire's hands, face shape, hair color, and more, it all looked wrong to Margaret. More on this later. Dr. Butthole explained that a course of drugs given to Claire in her childhood had shrunken her internal organs and caused cirrhosis of the liver and, changed her appearance. Nonsense. She just made all that shit up. Margaret was then taken to Olalla to see Dora, who now looked like a, quote, human skeleton. She was housed in a rough cabin. She'd been taken out of the fucking attic and put in a weird shack. She looked a lot more like a concentration camp victim than a sanitarium patient. Her bones protruded so sharply, she couldn't sit down without feeling pain. Dora pleaded with Margaret to please save her, to take her away, but then the very next day she withdrew her request and insisted the fasting was good for her, that it was saving her. She's insane. Margaret now learned that Dr. Butthole had been appointed executor of Claire's estate, that evil fuck, and also as Dora's lifelong guardian. She also saw that the Hazzard were using Claire's clothing and household items. They'd taken around $6,000 worth of their diamonds, sapphires, and other jewels, equivalent to over $200,000 worth of jewels today. Margaret now decided to stay in hopes of convincing Dora to leave. Also tried to sneak in rice and flour, sneaking into her tomato broth. Margaret said in a later interview, Miss Dorothea was in such a precarious condition that I could not remove her from the so-called sanitarium. From the first day I came upon the scene, Dr. Hazzard hated me. I knew she did by the way she glowered at me. She put me on my guard also when she asked if I wasn't going to make up my mind and stay there and be one of the Institute assistants. I thought that something must be wrong, certainly, if she expected I would stay in such a place and fast with the rest of them. I soon found out that she did no fasting. Although she lectured upon the subject of and advocated 1 meal a day, she had 3 and sometimes 4 meals. She was very greedy and selfish. Yeah, she's a monster. Of course she was eating plenty, just like a cult leader or politician so rarely practicing what they preach. Normally the patients at the sanitarium were separated, but during the July 4th celebration, 2 patients approached Margaret and told them they were prisoners. They begged her to help them leave. When Margaret announced to Linda that she was leaving and taking Dora with her, Linda said Dora could not leave. As Dora's legal guardian, Linda planned on keeping her at the sanitarium. This lady's fucking trapped. Margaret knew she needed help, so now she left the property to go to the sister's uncle, John Herbert, in Portland to see if John could come up with something to save Dora. When John Herbert arrived at Olalla a few days later, to his credit, he came right up. He was now forced to pay Linda almost $2,000, equivalent to over 70 grand today, to free Dora, right? Just getting fleeced. Herbert now reached out to Lucien Agassiz, the British vice consul in Tacoma, over this blatant bit of extortion. Herbert and Lucien quickly discovered that Linda was connected to the deaths of several other wealthy individuals, many of whom had signed large portions of their estates over to her shortly before they died. Of course. She may have been interested in actually helping people at one point in her life, but now she was nothing more than a black widow, a ruthless torturer and murderer. There were also rumors that Dr. Butthole was working with the Butterworth mortuary and that she had switched Claire's body with a healthier body so no one could see how skeletal she had been at the time of her death. So she's bribing people to be part of this fucking grift. May 30th, 1911, less than 2 weeks after Claire Williamson died, Linda lost another patient, Frank S. Southard, a member of the law firm of Morris, Shipley & Southard. He died after a prolonged fast. His official cause of death listed as uremic poisoning caused by a complication of liver and kidney trouble. Southard had been described as a sturdy man, an athlete, until the year prior to his death. He decided, following a consultation with Dr. Hazzard, to reduce his weight from 210 pounds to 140 pounds. Quote, following out Dr. Hazzard's instructions, he almost discontinued taking food, contenting himself with a little soup and grapefruit. Well, the fast worked, kind of, but he developed kidney problems and never returned to normal eating habits. Southard's law partner, William Morris, later spoke up for Linda, saying Southard was never starved, but he simply abstained from solid foods. Linda said his cause of death was drinking 2 strong cups of black coffee while on a camping trip after his treatment. Yeah, totally. I mean, starvation never kills anybody, but drinking 2 cups of coffee while camping? Oh, obviously lethal. C.A. Harrison, publisher of the Alaska Yukon magazine, also died in 1911 while fasting under Dr. Butthole's care. July 28, 1911, Lucien Agassiz, that British vice consul, and U.S. Attorney Frank Kelly traveled to Port Orchard, just a bit north of Olalla, to appear on behalf of the heirs of Claire Williamson, who sought to prevent Linda from obtaining the administration of her estate. They alleged that Linda took advantage of both Claire and Dora while they were in her sanitarium, and that she not only attempted to starve them to death, but obtained such control over them that they were induced to give away large sums of money and jewelry. Agassiz and Kelly sought to have Linda removed as Dora's guardian and prevent her appointment as executor of Claire's will. After hearing testimony on July 31st, a court commissioner did remove Linda as Dora's guardian, and Lucien Agassiz was made administrator of Claire's estate. And now Dora could be freed. Just in the nick of time, hail Nimrod. Dora's attorney, Frank Kelly, said material would now be given to the Kitsap County prosecutor to support a manslaughter charge, as well as several civil suits, right? That this wasn't just medical malpractice, that she was actively killing people. In her testimony, Linda said she had paid no attention to money matters with Claire, and all transactions were Claire's wish. Dora testified that a healthy weight for her was 110 pounds, and that she weighed 105 pounds when she started Linda's treatment, and now weighed 61 pounds. Fuck, that's brutal. 61 pounds. How is she still alive? August 5th, 1911. I wish I knew her height. But anyway, August 5th, 1911, Linda, Dr. Butthole Hazzard, is arrested, charged with murder by starvation. She's taken from Olalla to Port Orchard and held in jail for the night, and her bail is fixed at $10,000. The warrant was issued after Lucien Agassiz and attorney Frank Kelly presented their case to the prosecutor. Authorities acted quickly on information that Linda was planning to return to Seattle, then flee to either New York or Hong Kong. The warrant charged that Linda, quote, did willfully, unlawfully, feloniously, and with premeditated design to effect the death of Claire Williamson, deprive and keep from the said Claire Williamson food and sustenance sufficient to keep life in her body, the said Linda Burfield Hazzard, thereby mortally depleting the strength and vitality of Claire Williamson, by reason whereof she did languish and die on the 19th day of May, 1911. It is said that in a comparatively brief time, both young women were in such a physical condition that their minds became partially affected, and that the woman doctor had them perfectly under her control. She is said to have fed them principally on a weak broth made of asparagus and water. At the time of Claire's death, Dora, quote, was in such a mental and physical condition through improper nourishment that she could not understand the import of the news. Vice Consul Agassi reported that Dora was recovering nicely now and would be healthy in a few weeks. And he was right, somewhat. Dora gave her first public statement, August 6, 1911, from the home of Vice Consul Agassi. She was still, quote, hollow-cheeked and emaciated. She now weighed 65 pounds. God! Dora declared her belief that she and Claire were kept under control by the psychological influences and suggestions of Linda Hazzard. And now here's a lengthy account from her describing the hell she had been put through. Wild that she was able to deliver this statement while weighing just 65 pounds. I think that it was psychology, nothing more or less, that was responsible for continuance of the treatment of my sister and myself under Dr. Hazzard. Dr. Hazzard knew from the first that I did not like her. I had a kind of instinctive fear of her for some reason or other. With her, what seems to me now must have been psychological, method she won me over. However, and I did not protest at anything she wanted me to do. It seemed to me that she acted afraid of me most of the time, too. I don't know why. She would glare at me so sometimes with those terrible eyes of hers. She would always keep suggesting things to me. She said first that I was unsound mentally, that I was an imbecile. She said she was always afraid I would harm myself. One day, she said, one of her patients fell down the big gulch alongside the cabin, where my sister and I were, and committed suicide, and added she was so afraid I would also kill myself. Another time, I raised the window in my room, and she cried to her husband, Sam was his name, that she was afraid I would jump out and kill myself. Fancy the window was 2 feet above the ground. She said one of her patients did that. Her husband asked me to close the window, which I did. I told him I was in bed again and that I was all right. She said she was so afraid I would harm myself. One evening, when it was dark, I went to her room for something or other, and she grasped me and said she was afraid I might injure her. She seemed always afraid and always suggesting something terrible. She said one of her patients had tried to force her teeth down her throat and that she was afraid I might try to do something like that. Dr. Hazzard told me my sister was weak and that since I was mentally unsound, I should not go near her. I just had to behave like a child to her. I said yes, 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 all the time for fear of getting her angered. During the time we were fasting, I wanted food, oh, so much. But she just kept on saying, just wait a little bit. I will give you some shortly. I kept asking and asking right along, but when I seemed near to me, it went away just like a puff of wind. Finally, I got into such condition that I did not care for food and really believed against my wishes that I didn't need any. I was delirious sometimes, and after I had been out of my head like that several times, Dr. Hazzard said it was wrong that I should allow myself to do that. She said it was my own fault, that I was responsible for everything not going right. She kept that up until I really thought everything was wrong because I was wrong myself. I did think that after I suspected there was something unusual about the doctor's behavior toward me, that it must be myself that was just not right. The thought occurring to me and being suggested to me by the doctor, who gazed at me all the time in that way as though she were saying, I know you don't like me, but you ought to. It finally led me to think I ought to, and I did give up to her wishes and acceded to her every request. I was so afraid of offending her. She had such an awful voice. Everybody else seemed to be afraid of her too. I don't know just how I came to be treated by Dr. Hazzard. I think my sister and I first saw her book, Starvation as a Cure of Disease, at Victoria. She said she could not have written the book, I am sure. She could not have written the book, I am sure. She was an ignorant kind of woman. This struck me particularly in my lucid moments at the sanitarium. I think it must have been her husband who wrote it. He was nice. He just did what she told him to do. They had, an unusually attractive pamphlet telling about the beautiful place at Olalla. It was well gotten up so that we at once became interested. My sister and I were then treated in our apartments in Seattle by Dr. Hazzard and began fasting. Unknown to myself, I became weaker and weaker from lack of food. I did not realize it at first. I really do not know just when I went to Olalla, where this perfect place as I thought was, because I became so weak I had unconscious spells. It was during one of these I remember going in an ambulance, but no more. In my lucid intervals, I did think I had found a perfect place, as I had so often thought before. Soon, however, I was able to realize that it was not so. Somehow I rallied a little and just hung on to life until Miss Conway came. Dr. Hazzard was awful sometimes. Often in my weak and emaciated condition, I would sit in my chair, or more often lie in bed and cry and cry. Miss Robertson, a nurse there, would be soothing me, and then Dr. Hazzard, angry because I was crying, would chide me. Once she grabbed a hold of my wrist and horribly shook me. Dr. Hazzard was cruel, all right. The way she ordered her husband and help around was awful. I know little of my sister's death. I know at first at Olalla, I would walk over to her room and see her, but Dr. Hazzard said she was weak and that being afraid that I was mentally unsound, I better not visit her. My sister was then unable to walk, so ill was she. I finally thought myself I better not see her, as Dr. Hazzard told me that so much I began to think I should not wait on her even if I knew nobody else did. Weak as I was, I had to tend my sister as no one else did. As I said, however, I got weaker too, and my sister was neglected more than ever. So I did not realize it much when she died. I was so very ill. God, these fucking poor people. Right? She still seems a little delirious there. That same day, Lucien Agassiz announced a link to a similar case, the death of Ivan Flux. Not the Chowder Ivan, different Ivan, the son of J.H. Flux of Gloucester, England. Ivan had come to the States with plans to buy a ranch in the summer of 1910. He began his fasting cure on December 9th, and he died 2 months later, God knows how many pounds lighter, February 10th, 1911. A note of Ivan's death was written 3 days after he died, but was not mailed until 3 weeks later. The wording was identical to that of a letter read at a preliminary hearing of Dr. Hazzard, where she described the causes of Claire Williamson's death. In the letter, she claimed Ivan died due to excessive drug use in his youth, and that nature had been, quote, generous to permit him to live so long, just as she wrote in Claire's case. It's never the starvation. It's always something else. When Agassiz looked into medical records, Ivan's cause of death was listed as pneumonia. The signature of the doctor who made the autopsy finding was L.B. Hazzard. He knew the circumstances surrounding Ivan's case could not be ignored. Linda had reached out to Ivan's father because of the suspicion surrounding his death. She wrote that his roommate, a former patient identified as Gallagher, sent Ivan to her for treatment. She enclosed a letter supposedly written by Gallagher to back up her claims. Gallagher described Ivan's suffering and his desire for a cure. He claimed he was living in the apartment next door when Ivan died, February 10th. The letter satisfied the family for a short time, but when Agassiz picked the case back up, he realized no one could find this J.F. Gallagher character. An unsigned typed letter arrived at Agassiz's Tacoma office August 21st, 1911, informing him that Gallagher had gone to British Columbia. A phone number was provided, but the number was fake. Ivan's wealth was, of course, taken by the Hazards. Ivan's father was not only shocked to learn his son had died under Linda's care, but that they'd also taken his son's personal effects and assets. Ivan had several $100s when he had left to go to the U.S., which he had planned to use to buy a ranch, which is wild that a century ago you could buy a fucking ranch for a couple $100. Now that money was gone. Linda Hazzard had made herself administrator of his estate, claimed he had less than $70 when he died, and now prosecutors wanted to have Ivan's body exhumed so they could ascertain a true cause of death. However, Agassiz ultimately will decide not to prosecute this case because Ivan's father didn't have enough money for an attorney, and they doubted a fair, impartial prosecution was possible. So, bummer. Agassiz also received an anonymous tip about the Wakeland matter, right? This is the guy I mentioned earlier, the one who'd supposedly shot himself in the head while staying in Wilderness Heights. This is one of many tips he'd received since the arrest. He had no idea who Wakeland was. A female caller told him some 2 years ago Mr. Wakeland was a patient of Dr. Hazzard's. He came from New Zealand to take the fast cure, and he shot himself, though I doubt it quite a bit. You see, they didn't find the decomposed body for 3 weeks after his death, yet Dr. Hazzard was supposedly treating him daily. She also claimed Butterworth's involved in this one as well, and she's referring to that Butterworth mortuary, the place Linda may have dragged into her grift. Probably did. Morticians possibly swapping out bodies, assigning fictitious causes of death to the people Linda was killing for financial kickbacks. Eugene Stanley Wakeland was 26 years old when he died. Wakeland had come to America again from New Zealand after reading that book, Fasting for the Cure of Disease. How the hell she was able to get her quack book published in New Zealand, I have no idea. Wakeland was the son of a lord, but he'd obtained funds for the passage and treatment by borrowing money. He hadn't wanted his family to know what he was doing. Once he was good and delirious from hunger, Linda had appointed herself administrator of his estate, but found out it was valued at only $223. His funeral bill from Butterworth & Sons was $155, which was considered ridiculously high for the time. To Agassi, this was further proof of Linda's nefarious connection to the funeral parlor. Right? They would overbill her as opposed to taking a more direct form of a bribe. After speaking to King County officials, Agassi came to believe the authorities were looking the other way as well, that they were also being bribed. He later wrote, "My contention is that the county coroner's office, or at least the deputy coroner of King County, has been working for some years past hand in hand with Dr. Hazzard. It is very hard to get all the real facts." Samuel Wakeling was reported to have died of suicide with a .38 caliber revolver to the head. On November 7th, 1909, Linda had power of attorney over his estate and appointed H.G. Sutton as administrator. Sutton and Linda shared the same attorneys. Linda complained to Wakeling's New Zealand attorneys that there wasn't enough money in the man's estate to cover his funeral costs. She wanted to know where the money was, but was told there was not additional funds, and Agassi wondered if Wakeling was shot by Linda or some henchman out of rage because he didn't have the means they expected a son of a lord to have. July 24th, 1911. Shortly after Dora and Margaret Conway exposed Linda Hazzard, Sutton finished his obligations with the Wakeling estate and was dismissed as administrator by a King County judge. Agassi speculated that Sutton was warned someone was going to complain about Linda and that he was in on this murderous scam as well. We'll never know how many people colluded on this dark and disgusting way to make a buck. Agassi said in his public announcement about the cases, "The plan of operation of this institute is easily outlined. After weakening patients to the point of getting absolute control of them, they are shipped to Olalla. Here the patients are told the nurses and attendants are dishonest and that they better give Dr. Hazzard their valuables, and so on. Dr. Hazzard now starts in and gets everything." Lucy and Agassi now announced that they were not including any relatives of Linda in the criminal case as accomplices because it would be easier to deal with one principal actor. However, later civil suits would include other people. He also announced that they were filing a $25,000 suit against Linda and Butterworth and Sons, the undertakers who took Claire's body. An autopsy was allegedly performed at their company without due process. According to the suit, Linda allegedly removed some of Claire's organs and allegedly kept them on display at her office in Seattle. What the fuck? Was that her equivalent of a serial killer taking trophies from victims? How messed up was Dr. Butthole? Wish I could find out what happened with all the civil trials, but I'm not sure the settlements were ever recorded in the newspapers back then. Settlements are often privately reached, but we do have, information about the criminal case. August 12th, 1911, Linda is properly arraigned for her murder trial. She's granted an extension until August 26th to enter a plea. She will plead not guilty. Also served a summons in the $25,000 lawsuit filed by Dora's attorney. Lucian Agassi and attorney Frank Kelly announced they had been on a trip to British Columbia gathering evidence. There they found evidence that Linda had forged part of Claire's diary. Margaret Conway had found an entry titled "My Wishes," which gave almost her entire estate to Linda, and it didn't look like it was written in her handwriting. And by her own admission, Linda had written in Claire's diary, but just once. The expert she admitted to writing was dated May 19th, the day Claire died, and it read, "Claire died today, and her body was taken to Seattle accompanied by omitted and omitted." Linda explained she wrote the entry to serve as an end to Claire's life account. Prosecutors, of course, believe Linda had also wrote the "My Wishes" entry due to the nature of the handwriting and several misspelled words, including the name of Claire's childhood nurse. In August, Agassi claimed Linda and her son both forged Claire's signatures to obtain valuables and personal effects. At a hearing on October 21st for the civil case that will happen before the criminal trial, I guess, Dora came face-to-face with Linda for the first time since she'd been taken from Olalla. Not sure how much she now weighed, but, good to know that she was healthy enough to go to court. Linda had been called in as a witness in the civil case. She admitted to receiving $1,324 from Dora. She was asked if she'd ever received a $110 check from Dora, which was pension money owed to her. Linda denied receiving such a check, but identified her signature on the back of the check. She claimed she only endorsed the money for Dora, but didn't receive it. Dr. Butthole then denied signing the letter written to the Canadian Bank of Commerce, claiming she was Dora's legal guardian and had power of attorney to withdraw money. She claimed the signature was her husband's. Sam did it, Handsome Sam. He would often sign her name in communications, and he's a real rapscallion. Just throwing Handsome Sam under the bus there. Linda testified the sisters were ignorant of business affairs, and she helped them by endorsing and cashing their checks at banks where she was well known. Dora testified that she never received a $110 pension check, and that while she was sick, Linda often persuaded her to sign checks to her. She had asked for an itemized account of her indebtedness, but Linda refused, told her she wasn't fit to discuss business. but then later would ask Dora for money, claiming that she owed her money. Dora testified that Linda, quote, had a psychological influence over me. She made me believe everything she did was perfect and that it was very wrong for me not to do exactly as she ordered. I felt the need of nourishing food and often asked her for milk, bread, ham, and eggs, anything, but she told me it was dangerous for me to eat. I was always kept believing that I was just about to receive some real nourishing food, but I never got it. My daily diet was a half cup of orange juice and a few greens, either asparagus, lettuce, and spinach. I gradually grew weaker and weaker under this diet until I could not even crawl around, and it was an effort for me to even sign the checks she gave me. She claimed that she signed, God, that's fucking crazy to be so fatigued, so weak, that it just takes just a crazy amount of effort to sign a check. She claimed that she signed one receipt, which was an exhibit of the defense, under duress, and did so because she was told she could not leave Olalla until she made her settlement. Dora's uncle, John Herbert, corroborated this, saying, I considered the settlement exorbitant and unreasonable. But Dora was a wreck of her former self, and I knew if she stayed there a week longer, she would follow her sister. Dr. Hazzard told me she was a specialist, and her charge for treating Dorothea was $2,000. She also told me she could charge whatever she pleased, and that any court would uphold her. Well, that's evil. On October 25th, 2011, the judge denied Linda's claim of $2,000 for professional services and ordered her to refund $1,574.87 to Dora. The day before the criminal trial began, the prosecution found another witness who would testify about the tortures of the starvation doctor's treatment. She was expected to tell of a visit to the sanitarium to see a friend several weeks before Claire Williamson died. Claire had been fasting for 40 days at this point, was severely emaciated. The witness was talking with another patient in the same room, occupied by Claire, when Linda came in, walked over to Claire's bed. Dora was on another bed, quote, babbling incoherently. The witness said that Linda threw off the bedclothes, so the covers, and began slapping Claire's body while shouting, eliminate, eliminate, eliminate. The fuck? When she was done, Claire rolled her eyes and murmured, oh, what a lovely treatment. This is madness. The witness also heard that a young Englishman had died that morning, and Dr. Hazzard said she had cut up his remains. So much easier to be a murderous monster back then. She wasn't even hiding what she was doing to these people. Linda's criminal trial finally began January 15th, 1912. Linda declared to reporters, so there was civil, testimony we heard before. Linda declared to reporters on the second day of the trial, quote, I intend to reopen my sanitarium at Olalla February 15. I've had inquiry from all over the country, from people asking me to reopen, and I'm going to. I've spent a lifetime in my work, and do you think I'm going to give it up now? No, never. I'm going right back to it, harder than ever. When asked what she would do if the trial didn't go as she thought it would, she replied, there is no such thing as if. Besides, don't you know there was a whole lot in being right with yourself? If one is right that way, then nothing else matters. Linda also said, and I have not lost a moment's sleep nor shed a tear thus far and don't expect to. God, it must be nice to be a sociopath, right? Just to truly not be burdened by caring about others. Just to not care if the whole rest of the world thinks you're a fucking monster. The defense planned to argue that Claire died because she refused food when offered by Dr. Hazzard. They also planned to argue that if Linda schemed to steal the Williamson sisters' estate, all she would have received would have been a yearly donation to the sanitarium of 25 pounds bequeathed by Claire. During a recess on the opening day of testimony, Linda laughed and said, do you know I can't feel serious about this trial as I suppose I ought? I really feel almost as if it were a play. Prosecutor Frank Kelly soon opened the case. Kelly told the jury that for over 2 months, Claire's diet consisted of 1/2 dozen sprigs of asparagus and 2 or 3 tomatoes boiled together in a quart of water until half the water was boiled away. The broth was strained and a piece of butter about the size of a person's thumb was added. 1/2 to 1 pint of broth was given for a meal. A half cup of fruit juice was given at times. As they were starving, Linda was attempting to obtain control of the Williamson sisters' estate, valued at 25,000 pounds, about 3.8 million pounds, or 5 million in today's dollars. They also received an annuity of 600 pounds each, so 90,000 pounds per sister per year, equivalent to almost $120,000 a year per sister. Wow. So Linda was going to make a fortune just on these two. Upon their arrival in Seattle, the sisters had agreed to pay a monthly stipend, follow the diet. Then after 3 or 4 weeks, they were so weak that they could no longer make their daily visits to Linda's downtown Seattle office, so Linda sent a nurse to help them. During that time, she went to the apartment to administer treatments and gain knowledge of their financial means. She managed business affairs, signed checks, and soon had full control over their estate. Upon their transfer to Olalla, Linda obtained an order from Claire for a large sum of money in a British Columbia bank made payable to her. She allegedly deposited it at her bank in Seattle. She obtained another order from the Bank of England, giving her power to draw any money she wanted from Claire's credit. At Olalla, the sisters continued in the same weakened condition. Claire wrote letters expressing her hope that some morning she would wake up in a glorious condition of health. Claire made a codicil to her will and update, giving most of her estate to the sanitarium, and then Margaret Conway responded to the call for help and discovered that Claire was dead and Dora was on the brink of starvation. The prosecution noted that Claire died from a lack of food and because of a treatment, quote, which could not find support today among any competent medical experts. Linda had been appointed Claire's guardian on the grounds of mental incompetency, and her husband had power of attorney. According to the prosecution, after filing the petition, Linda's husband, Sam, went to Victoria and Vancouver to withdraw a large sum of money from the sisters' bank accounts there, which he allegedly deposited into his own account in Seattle. Yeah, he's just as fucking grifty as her. Other sums of money were obtained from Dora before and after this with and without her knowledge and or consent. Linda also took the sisters' clothing and other belongings like those jewels. Dora testified about how she and Claire discovered Linda's clinic and what kinds of treatments they underwent, which we've already gone over. She again just talked to the court about how fucking weak she was, how, mistreated she was, how abused. Dora testified about how nurse Nellie Sherman took care of them after they spent a few weeks alone in their apartment. Said Nellie was kind, but when they pleaded with Linda to get another nurse to help them, she refused because it would not be safe as she might give us food. John Herbert, the sister's uncle, testified that he doubted the body he viewed was Claire's, saying, I told Mrs. Hazzard so and the others that were in the room at the time. I said I did not believe that it was she, and declared I did not recognize the body as Claire's. He added, in life, Claire's hair was brown. The being in the coffin had hair and eyelashes of a lighter hue. I could not determine the color of the eyes as the lids were closed. He testified that Linda told him that she had known of Claire's approaching death and had expected Dora actually to die a week before Claire did. When he asked Linda why she did not contact him until May 22nd, she said the sisters did not want anyone to know their whereabouts, and she didn't allow Dora to write or receive letters because of her health. Yeah, looking out for her health. Herbert testified that he could not remove Dora from the sanitarium immediately because Linda refused to let her leave until the account was settled. The court then heard from Margaret Conway and Esther Cameron next. Esther assisted Nellie Sherman at the sanitarium. Margaret Conway, the nurse who, nanny who saved Dora, testified she saw a body at the undertaker's office, but said, I didn't recognize the body I saw in the least. When she arrived in Seattle, Linda claimed that the sisters were already in poor health. She claimed Claire told her, Dr. Hazzard, I've come to you to be cured or to die. Linda also said that after her death, Claire's liver was so hard a knife wouldn't go into it, that the blood in her heart was dry, and that her intestines so shriveled a pencil wouldn't go through them. Typical doctor talk. Medically speaking, her dead blood was pretty dry, and that's weird. And when I did the standard intestine pencil test, I'm sure you're familiar with, it didn't work. So I guess I rest my case, Your Honor. And what case is that, Dr. Hazzard? I'm not sure, Your Honor. In her testimony the day before, Dora denied that Claire wrote an entry in her diary titled My Wishes. Dora said that was written by Linda Hazzard. Margaret Conway testified Linda told her Claire had written it. So, it goes back and forth. Who's the jury going to believe? Esther Cameron testified that she was on orders from Linda, quote, not to take anything the sisters wanted from their trunks, not to talk to them, not to let them talk to her or to each other, not to give them any food outside of her orders because it would kill them. She said that after Claire died, she saw her body laying across an ironing board over a bathtub. That's fucking so sad that there was so little left of her, they could just drape her remains over an iron board. A physician called by the prosecution testified that Claire would have had to have eaten around 50 times the amount of vegetable broth and food she was given to just barely sustain life. The defense opened their case January 27th. Nellie Sherman testified that Linda always maintained an attitude of love, kindness, tenderness, and friendship for Claire. Nellie added, we felt sometimes that we were even giving the patient too much food, considering that all of which she partook appeared to be injurious. Oh yeah, of course it was injurious. She was so fucked up from her treatment she couldn't eat like a normal person anymore. Nellie said she saw both sisters fade in strength and helped transport them to the retreat. She denied anybody other than herself prepared or served the food rations, or that the enema baths were given with the assistance of a man, as the prosecution had alleged. Only women were playing with these girls' buttholes. Nellie said she was present when Claire dictated diary entries written by Linda, when the power of attorney and gift presenting and gift presenting the sanitarium with $1,000 written, and when other transactions were made. Oh yeah, so Nellie was clearly complicit in Linda's evil. February 4th, 1912, Linda Hazzard is found guilty of not murder, but manslaughter for the death of Claire Williamson. Despite the widespread negative publicity, there were actually still people who believed in the fasting cure who were coming to Linda for help while she was on trial for manslaughter. Well, for murder that ended up being charged with manslaughter. Linda filed an appeal, and now more patients will be treated while she awaits that appeal, and more patients will starve and die. On July 1st, 1912, the Washington State Board of Medical Examiners did finally revoke Linda's license, but then she just continued giving speeches and doing more writing. And then backing up before we go forward, in the fall of 1911, another crazy case, 61-year-old Mary Bailey decided to undergo Dr. Butthole's fasting cure. Although she had seen the media coverage from the trial, she still wanted to do it. She left home in Tacoma before trial to move to an anarchist settlement on the Key Peninsula led by someone known as Kings Mill Commander, who had undertaken the fasting cure. He claimed he had lost over 100 pounds in 25 days and was in perfect health. Oh, Jesus. What the fuck is going on in this story? Why were there so many Looney Tunes around Seattle back in 1911? Let's take a quick side quest. Apparently in the late 19th century, a whole bunch of utopian communities had sprouted up around the Puget Sound, including this anarchist community that was launched in 1898 called the Home Colony. It began with 26 acres bought by 3 anarchists, and it had very few cooperative institutions, aside from a co-op store, a couple mutual construction projects, and a weekly anarchist paper called Discontent, Mother of Progress. An original 40 colonists grew to 91 colonists by 1900, grew to 155 by 1906. More people came to print whatever they wanted to print newspapers during this period of growth, but they kept getting in trouble for obscenity charges, despite them believing they should be able to do whatever they want because they're anarchists. When they would write about free love and print photos of like naked colonists, they would get fined for breaking obscenity laws, and then the post office would consistently refuse to deliver their papers. Tacoma newspapers referred to this colony as a nest of vipers and a den of infamy. According to one source, quote, despite all the tribulations of its residents, Home was a major center of Saturday night dancing in the still undeveloped region, and they often danced well past 2 a.m. Beyond this, Home was a center for spiritualists with seances, hatha yoga, slate writing, other post-Victorian staples of the occult underworld, even housing a bona fide Addams family among its residents. Visitors included everyone from local journalists to a mysterious foreign woman who never gave her name, and the famous playwright Eugene O'Neill was so angered by the portrayal of Donald Vose that he wrote, "The Iceman cometh so that others might know what happened to Home and its population of cranks, bums, and free women." By 1909, the colony had mostly folded due to a lot of lawsuits and fines. Side quest over. I feel like my life has been far too boring. Why am I living in a neighborhood, not in some experimental compound? November 11th, 1911, Mary Bailey had made the trip to Olalla to undergo Dr. Butthole's treatment. Also around this time, a woman named Ida Anderson, the wife of wealthy banker H.C. Anderson, was also seeking a fasting cure. Her husband had suffered a serious case of ptomaine poisoning, and a nurse was called to their home to eliminate the poison. That nurse, June Oakes, was a follower of Dr. Butthole's. Soon after Mr. Anderson was cured, Mrs. Anderson discovered she was pregnant. The baby will be born sickly, and Mrs. Anderson will send for Nurse Oakes, whom she had grown fond of. And June Oakes, in all her wisdom, now decides to put this sick infant on a diet and gave it baths and enemas in a nearby creek, and it died. Of course the baby died. That creek water was fucking cold as shit, and babies shouldn't be put on diets or given cold creek enemas. Ida's husband and his family blamed Nurse Oakes, but the more they urged Ida to dismiss her, the stronger her influence became. The family suspected Nurse Oakes wanted to cause a divorce and then gain control of Ida's finances. Right, of course, she learned from Dr. Butthole to not just starve patients, but to take all their shit. When Ida's second baby was born, her husband refused to allow a repeat tragedy. Mrs. Oakes was dismissed. Ida was sent to a hospital, a psychiatric facility, it sounds like, where she recovered. But then one day when nobody's watching, she picked up her baby and escaped. She checked into a hotel. Within a few weeks, both she and her baby were almost dead because she was fucking starving them both with Dr. Butthole's guidance. She had only been fed broth. Her baby was only given warm water flavored with fruit coloring every other day. So evil. Ida Anderson died March 20th, 1913. The baby lived, thankfully, barely, was placed into her grandmother's custody, and her grandma was able to get the baby back to health. Linda later admitted she had been treating Ida Anderson. A coroner's inquest held at Mr. Anderson's insistence did determine that Ida had been starved to death on March 23rd, 1913. That same day, the Kitsap County coroner came to Starvation Heights to investigate another reported death, Mary Bailey's, the lady from the anarchist colony. Her body was found on a cot in a cabin, and she had burns all over her body, showing that the wrappers had burned off of these bricks she was using to keep warm. Mary was so weak from starvation that she couldn't tell anyone what was happening to her. This place truly was a horror movie that just nobody bothered to film. A friend of Mary's told the coroner that Nurse Oakes and Linda Hazzard had both been caring for her, and that Linda had been in to see her 3 or 4 times the night she died. But no new charges are filed. 6 months after Linda was back in the papers for the case of Robert Graham, 6 months later, she's back in the papers for the case of Robert Graham, a wealthy Londoner who owned bakeries all over Britain. He reportedly invented a health bread, came to Olalla to see if Linda would incorporate his recipe into her treatments. And once in Olalla, Graham decided, you know what, why not take the fast cure? And then soon, due to his rapid weight loss, concerned business associates contacted authorities and Lucien Agassiz returned to Wilderness Heights to investigate. He confirmed that Graham was staying there, undergoing the fast, but he couldn't find Graham. Linda told him that, he was out taking a sunbath somewhere, probably out in the woods somewhere. She insisted he was fine. A few weeks later, a much thinner Mr. Graham left Olalla without a bakery deal and barely with his life. Then on October 24th, 1913, the Tacoma Daily Ledger reported that Fred Ebsen died after a 49-day fast that he tried to undergo after reading Linda's book. He had died alone because she had refused to treat him because he didn't have enough money. How many other people died? Because they just, bought her book and did a home fast. Shortly before Thanksgiving Day, 1913, the state Supreme Court rejected Linda's appeal, meaning she had to go to prison. She was given 1 month to close out her business affairs and report. Linda would now begin serving what would end up just being a 2-year sentence. She would serve only 2 years of an indeterminate sentence for manslaughter and then be released on Christmas Day in 1915. Then on June 2nd, 1916, she got a fucking full pardon by Governor Ernest Lister. How the hell did she bribe him? She must have. Linda now said she would go to New Zealand, and she did. And she took her deadly grift with her. She's now 48 years old, far from done. Her shady husband, Handsome Sam, that fellow grifter, is still with her, and he follows her overseas. I mean, they're doing this together. Just 2 years later, in July of 1918, Linda charged in New Zealand with dishing out medical treatment while not being registered under the Medical Practitioners Act. She's fined £5, so nothing. Evidence was given that in September of 1917, Linda had advertised in a paper as being a licensed physician, and she had referred to herself as a doctor, even though she was not actually a doctor. 3 years later, she returned after killing who knows how many people. She returns to Olalla, Washington, opens up a new sanitarium known as a school of health, right? Because she can't get a medical license anymore. So she's still doing the same shit, just marketing herself as a teacher now, not as a doctor to keep doing it legally. She will continue to supervise God knows how many deadly fasts until her sanitarium finally is burned to the ground in May of 1935. I hope a patient was the one who set it on fire, and then it would never be rebuilt. Who knows how many died there. 3 years later, Linda's practice had dwindled to just a few loyal followers. I mean, yeah, it's hard to keep followers, when you keep killing your most devoted ones. In the summer of 1938, Linda called her last remaining followers to Olalla, began doing a big group fast. She was 70 years old now, determined to prove her methods worked, and they did. She died. Her fasting always worked if you just wanted to die. Linda died of starvation. How fitting. June 24th, 1938. What a perfect end for her. Just wish it would have happened sooner. Dr. Butthole apparently spent her last days ordering her husband, Handsome Sam, around until, quote, finally the light went out for Dr. Hazzard. When death came for his wife, it did so silently that Samuel Hazzard didn't know it until the morning he found her grotesquely thin corpse. The great fasting specialist was cold and alone when she died. Sam will die 8 years later, November 18th, 1946, in Bremerton, Washington, at the age of 77. He never followed his late wife's fasting advice. He must have known the entire time while he watched one person starve after another, it was just bullshit. And he never once tried to stop it, as far as we know. Of course not, right? That's how he made his money. Now let's get out of this timeline.
Good job, soldier. You made it back. Barely.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready to prioritize your health? Do you want to shed those last few pesky pounds? Are you willing to do whatever it takes to get your sad gut feeling good? To finally reach your dream weight? To finally reach a weight you never dared to dream of before? If you answered yes to any of these questions, come on out to Dan's Butt and Gut Sanitarium, aka the Danitarium. At the Danitarium, you will receive 2 90-minute enemas each and every day. Blast, blast, blast that pesky poop away. You'll eat no more than 3 oranges a day. If you're not hungry, you're dying. I'll personally give you 4 internal massages a day. How many fingers can I get in your butt? We'll find out. And finally, I'll dish out 5 daily weight loss judo chops. Eliminate, 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 eliminate. I want to get you down below 200 pounds. No, hell with that. I want to get you down below 100 pounds. Scratch that. I want to get you down below 50 pounds. No, it's not enough. I want to get you down below 10 pounds. Forget your wedding dress. Forget your high school clothes. I want to get you back into those baby clothes. All we do at the Danitarium is starve. You just got to eat those oranges. You just got to let me cleanse that colon. Let me get in there. Let me get in there with my hand and scrape that butthole clean. Get you good and lean. At the Danitarium, the temperature never falls below 125 degrees. It's always humid as hell. It's always very loud. We never stop playing this song that you're hearing right now. If you're comfortable, if you're calm, then you're not moving and you're not shedding pounds. So what are you waiting for, fatty? You think you're already skinny? Are you more than 10 pounds? If you are, we got work to do. Eliminate, 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 eliminate. Go to danitarium.biz for more info right now. The Danitarium is not liable for any adverse health effects due to Danitarium treatment. None of the claims made at the Danitarium have been approved by the FDA. None of the claims made at the Danitarium have been approved by any organization or any person outside of Dan and a small percentage of Danitarium physicians. None of the physicians at the Danitarium are physicians. None of the physicians have received any formal medical training, especially Jerry. There are no physicians at the Danitarium. The Danitarium is extremely dangerous. Most, if not all, patients will die eventually at the Danitarium after suffering migraines, nosebleeds, vision loss, tooth decay, heart attacks, anal prolapses, lung collapses, and total organ failure. Avoid Jerry at all costs if you visit the Danitarium. He cannot be trusted. He is very likely an agent of Satan, and everyone else at the Danitarium is extremely afraid of him. Please, if you care even a little bit about yourself, never ever visit the Danitarium. It's a house of only pain, madness, and death. You're better off shoving a half rack of Whipple up your ass. I know the music stopped. You would never set foot inside the Danitarium. Please don't do that. Help me. Please call the police right now. Let them know that the guy hired to read this disclaimer is currently trapped inside the Danitarium hiding from Jerry. I'm down to 70 pounds. I've had so many enemas, I've literally forgot how to pinch off my butthole. I hate this music. I hate the Danitarium. I can't do this much longer. I can't. What are you waiting for? Call the fucking police already. Well, that was interesting. Very real infomercial thing. God, I hope that guy's okay. So, Dr. Butthole, what a terrible murderous grift, Dr. Hazzard ran. One, she did seem to believe in, at least somewhat though. I mean, she did end up starving herself to death following her own protocols. We'll never know exactly how much of her own bullshit she believed. Speculating, I think she may have convinced herself that her method would work if the patient's disease wasn't too advanced by the time she began to treat them. Or as long as the patient followed her advice, like to the letter. Again, if she didn't believe it, she wouldn't have starved herself, I don't think. But why did she get her patients to sign over their assets to her if she really wanted to, treat them effectively? I wonder if maybe when certain patients didn't start to get better, she convinced herself that they were making her look bad. That they were cheating, not following her advice to the letter again. They were bad. She blamed them for failing, then used, blaming them to somehow rationalize just taking their shit. Something in that space. She never seemed to feel any remorse for what she was doing. She was incredibly arrogant about it all, even at her trial. She was so steadfast in her belief, she kept attracting clients even after being sent to prison for killing a client. She was firm in her convictions. She convinced the governor to pardon her. I used to look into wackadoodle grifters like her all the time when I had the weekly Patreon-only Secret Suck, and they're all the same in the sense that they have this ability, perhaps aided by true sociopathy, to seemingly maintain their belief in the grift in spite of any and all evidence to the contrary, right? They're able to employ consistently a massive amount of cognitive dissonance, reject any evidence that what they're doing is bad, that they are bad. It's a fucking superpower to not be burdened by self-doubt or remorse, to have such arrogance of certainty. And these Dr. Hazzard types, they're always so wildly arrogant. And that's why I never trust anybody who can't admit that they're sometimes wrong, right? That they make mistakes. I don't trust people who, trust their own judgment with just complete certainty. because their confidence is never based entirely in reality in my experience, right? Because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody is wrong. No one's above being questioned. No one, in my opinion, has a bunch of secret, powerful answers to wealth building, living a long, healthy life, etc. So, I don't know. Maybe don't trust somebody who doesn't think that they have everything figured out. Trust somebody instead who can speak very intelligently about their area of expertise, but who does so with at least a small dose of humility, with at least some, semblance of, I've studied a lot. I know a lot about this, but, I could be wrong. That often doesn't come across as reassuring, I know, to hear that, but I think it should because it's more honest. Also, when is A24 or some other production company going to make the horror movie version of this story? Let's get into the takeaways.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
Number 1, Linda Hazzard became a fasting specialist in 1898 after being influenced by Dr. Edward Hooker Dewey, a proponent of the no breakfast plan. Linda had struggled with stomach problems for years, possibly due to mercury poisoning from medicine prescribed to her as a child. She claimed that fasting and internal baths, aka enemas, cured her, and she set out to share her methods with the world. Number 2, it's possible that Linda's Minneapolis practice would have been wildly successful were it not for Sam Hazzard. Linda fell in love with Sam, who had already been married twice and never divorced. Sam was charged with bigamy, and the scandal pushed the couple out of Minneapolis. Number 3, Linda was arrested for the death of Claire Williamson, who died May 19th, 1911, after a prolonged fast with nothing but vegetable broth and juice. Claire, a woman in her 30s, weighed around 50 pounds at the time of her death. She should have weighed over twice that. And she would have, still been thin at over 100 pounds. Her sister Dora almost died, dropping to 61 pounds. Both women had signed over their estates and their rights, which was all part of Linda's plot to secure a steady stream of funds for the sanitarium. Her scheme was later exposed by prosecutors. Number 4, Linda Hazzard, the starvation doctor, starved to death herself at the age of 70 while undergoing her own fasting cure, determined to prove to her last few followers that her methods indeed worked. And they did. They killed you 100% of the time if you followed them to the letter. Number 5, new info. Can anyone really live without food? Of course not. Obviously, human beings need food to survive. However, there are people who claim they can fast for prolonged periods of time or eat very little food and still maintain perfect health. Breatharianism is the claimed ability for a person to live without consuming food and, in some cases, water. Only air and sunlight, baby. It's a dangerous pseudoscience, and many of its adherents have, of course, died of fucking starvation or dehydration. But right now, somewhere in the world, a lot of people are giving it a go. Put breatharianism into your YouTube search bar or any other search bar, and a lot of crazy shit comes up. Breatharians believe in an energy known in Hinduism as prana, a nourishing life force, that it can be absorbed from the air, and that it's all you need to sustain yourself. Jasmuheen, born Ellen Grieve, is an Australian mortgage broker turned New Age writer who's advocated for breatharianism since the mid-1990s. Her 1998 book, Living on Light, The Source of Nourishment for the New Millennium, describes a 21-day program that prepares people to survive without food or water indefinitely. Since the book's publication, at least 5 people have died because of this program. They've been strongly linked. She hasn't been criminally charged, but come on. For example, Lana Morris stuck to the 21-day program despite suffering a stroke and vomiting black liquid for days. After Morris's death, Jasmuheen, a fucking dumb made-up name, told journalists that she had, quote, not been coming from a place of integrity and did not have the right motivation. That's why she died. It wasn't from a lack of nutrients. No, it's from a lack of integrity. This piece of shit. The same year, Australia's 60 Minutes decided to test Jasmuheen, who claimed to frequently fast for long periods of time herself. They wanted to monitor her for several days. They found her fridge and cupboards stocked with food, which she claimed was for her boyfriend, of course. Producers challenged her to not eat or drink for a full week, and they put her under surveillance to ensure she didn't cheat. She began showing signs of dehydration after 2 days, and claimed that was due to the pollution in the air around the hotel where she was being housed. So now the producers moved her to the countryside, to get her away from that filthy air. But now after 4 days, she was gaunt, having trouble staying awake, and delirious. She couldn't follow her own bullshit for a single week. A doctor diagnosed her with extreme dehydration and concluded the test was too dangerous to continue for the full week. And this fucking maniac is still out there. She's still grifting, still publishing more books, hosting conventions, offering private instruction, and so much more. 2 months ago, she released a new manual called Ascension Dynamics, Revitalizing Earth and Her People. Here's a little taste of her talking about her bullshit. This is a welcome video on her website, jazzmuheen.com. She links over to YouTube for this, so you can tell this video is less than a year old.
Welcome, everybody. As I scan through the internet, but also tune in to the internet, I find that there's such a need for all of us to use our discernment. And yet, there's so much wonderful information around, so many incredibly bright and shining and switched on and loving and aware people sharing different methodology to guide us or to make it easier sometimes for us to move through this very fast changing time.
I would keep playing until she makes an intelligent point, but she doesn't. It's just a nonstop stream of wackadoodle word salad that just makes her more and more money. And I'm sure leads to more and more starvation deaths. And she looks fine, by the way. She's thin. She's not skinny. Clearly living on a lot more than love and light and air. Fucking grifters. The world will always be full of them. At least sometimes their bullshit is funny, I guess.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
The Starvation Doctor has been sucked. Thank you to the Bad Magic Productions team for helping making Timesuck. Thanks to the Queen of Bad Magic, Lindsay Cummins. To Logan Keith, helping to publish this episode and designing merch for the store at badmagicproductions.com. Thanks to Olivia Lee for her initial research. Thanks to the All Seen Eyes, moderating the Cult of the Curious private Facebook page, the Mod Squad, making sure Discord keeps running smooth, and everybody over on the Timesuck and Bad Magic subreddits. And now, this week's Timesucker updates.
Updates? Get your Timesucker updates.
Kicking off this week's updates with a truly fantastic one from a truly fantastic Sack, Haley Jennings, who wrote in to share a familial connection to General Patton. Hey there, Master Sucker and General of the Cult of the Curious. I am writing in because I just finished the latest episode about General Patton, and I had to share this story about my grandmother meeting Patton. After Patton was demoted for slapping that soldier in Italy, he was sent on a PR tour for the war effort. One of the places he went to was Beeville, Texas, to visit a hospital ward. My grandmother, or Momo, was the head nurse at the quiet ward. When Patton arrived, he had his entourage, his dog, and of course his sidearms that he never took off. He came to my Momo's ward, and she and the head doctor met him and greeted all of them. My Momo then told Patton that his dog, his guns, and his entourage were not allowed in the ward because it was quiet. It was a quiet ward full of badly injured soldiers. Patton looked at her and said, "This bitch," meaning his dog, "and my guns never leave this son of a bitch's," meaning himself's, side. My Momo looked at him dead in the face and replied, "Well, this bitch," meaning herself, "says this bitch," meaning the dog, "and you son of a bitch, are not to disturb these men." Patton looked at her and said, "Yes, ma'am." He then took off his guns, dismissed his men, left the dog outside, and personally visited each man in the ward and awarded them all Purple Hearts. A few weeks later, my Momo received a letter and a photo from Patton, and it said, "From this son of a bitch to the toughest bitch I've met, thank you for your effort in this war." Just wanted to share a family story. Thanks for all that you and the Bad Magic team do. Sorry for the length of this email, but I think it's a great thing that my Momo stood up to old blood and guts. Keep sucking. Hail Triple M, good boy Bojangles. Hail Lucifina, and praise Nimrod. 3 out of 5 stars, wouldn't change a thing. Haley J. Haley, holy shit. That was fucking brilliant. What an incredible bit of family lore. Your grandma was tough and witty. Hail Lucifina. I feel like had I had the chance to meet her, I would have really liked her. I love a sassy, take no bullshit lady. I mean, I married one. Clearly Patton loved her too. I bet he respected the hell out of her. Yeah, again, appreciate you sharing that story about your Momo. Momo is actually what I call my daughter Monroe, by the way. And now the next and final update is a long one. And unexpected and pretty intense. A repentant sucker wrote in with the subject line of, "I want you to know." Hello to whoever may be reading this. My name is Redacted. I want to take a moment to tell Bad Magic Productions and Dan Cummins in particular what all of y'all's efforts have meant to me. I truly believe that had I not found Dan's comedy, and had he never made Timesuck, I may have ended up becoming the kind of person you make a podcast episode about. Your team may have inadvertently prevented pain and hurt beyond what I've already caused. I had an abusive father and a very passive mother. No physical or sexual abuse towards me or my older sisters took place to my knowledge, but verbal and emotional abuse was the norm for us. I grew up being picked on and bullied. I was the fat, weird loner Mormon boy in a small town in Illinois. When I was 9, my family moved to Utah. It was there that I had a neighbor for the first time. It was genuinely scary for me. Nothing truly notable happened during my middle school years, just more bullying. Now, I won't pretend to be completely innocent. I had poor hygiene, was socially awkward, convinced I was funny, and was essentially a bully magnet. Some of it I certainly brought upon myself, and some of it was middle school bullying occurring naturally. If high school is where the first concerning things occurred, though I always kept them to myself. First, I had a girlfriend of 3 weeks, and then we broke up. This was sophomore year, and not actually surprising. What is abnormal is that at some point after we broke up, we ran into each other, and my first thought was to kill her for annoying me. I was able to rationalize to myself that she was annoying. No one liked her, and I'd be making the world more pleasant. Thankfully, I never touched her. Second, I began to realize that I was not straight and was firmly bisexual. I, of course, hid this from my friends and family. My father hounded me about plenty of other things already. I didn't need to hear about this. As has been highlighted many times on Timesuck, repressing a part of one's identity in such a manner is a horrible idea. Third, I decided to take an IQ test, and it turns out I have an IQ of 163. Of course, to a growing narcissist, convinced he was God's gift to man, this was an ego boost of astronomical proportions. I began to treat people as though they were inferior, and at the time, that was because I believed they were inferior. I especially began to look down on girls who rejected me. I believed I was the smartest, funniest, nicest, most handsome guy in school, though looking back, I was nowhere close. I hated them for not loving me. Though one of the girls I had allowed to be my friend said to me that she thought Kevin Hart was the best comedian and that I wasn't nearly as funny as him. I was personally offended by this comment and took upon myself to research Kevin Hart. Regardless of your thoughts on the man, I assure you, he was indeed funnier than me. But I did not believe so at the time. I felt that Kevin Hart, Fluffy, George Carlin, Bill Burr, etc. were all beneath my level of comedy. Then I stumbled across Dan Cummins. As I listened, I realized I was not as funny as Dan. Well, I appreciate your... I don't know if I agree with your judgment with me and those other guys, but okay, yeah, very flattered. I found myself forced to admit that I was not the best at something. It hurt, but it was for the best. This ego blow helped me mellow out for the rest of high school, but it wouldn't stop the darker things from growing within me. I began to have paranoid delusions in school. I began to think more and more, too much, honestly. I would believe that people were conspiring against me. It could be the government, the devil, God, school bullies, anyone. I told no one, but the delusions held firm. A month before my graduation in 2016, my dad died, and even now I still wrestle between loving and hating the man. I can say without question, though, that it hurt when he died. Though I was unable to cry for him, I didn't feel sad. I was hurt because I couldn't be the one to rid my family of him. I was hurt because I couldn't be the hero who got rid of him. My mother, my sisters, and I all moved back to Illinois the following spring. I'll spare you the extra details of my life, but I'll summarize it like this. I continued to struggle socially. Mentally, I continued to spiral. It got to the point that I knew if I pulled out a gun and shot someone dead, I wouldn't feel a hint of remorse. Eventually, I heard an advertisement for Timesuck and listened to my first episode. It was John Wayne Gacy. And as you talked, I wasn't completely horrified by what he did, more intrigued than anything else. As time went by, I listened to a number of episodes on serial killers, and every time you dug into them, mocked them, teased them, and poked holes in their ideologies with solid facts and logic, it made me rethink my own thoughts, though it still wasn't enough to rid the darker things within me. The 2 episodes that have impacted me the most are Mark Twitchell, the Dexter Killer, and the Children of Thunder Cult. The reason is because both of them feature a main character who believes so highly of themselves and fell so far from their horrific, lofty goals. It resonated inside me, though at the time I couldn't understand why. Fast forward again to the summer of 2023, and we get to my darkest hours and the worst things I've ever done. I had begun to grow paranoid that everyone close to me was a liar and a fraud. They only wanted to take advantage of me and hurt me. One day I was giving a 15-year-old coworker a ride home, and we dropped by my apartment. I won't sugarcoat what happened. We slept together, and then I took her home. At the time, I saw everything as fully consensual and rationalized what happened to myself as okay because in my mind she was, quote, mature for her age. I went about my life like nothing happened. I even continued to text her like we were the best of friends. 2 weeks later, she confronted me over text, justifiably angry about what had happened. I sat quietly and thought to myself about what to do. I'm ashamed to admit that my first thought was to go to her house and kill her and kill her family. I haven't mentioned it, but I'm a very large guy, 6'3", over 300 pounds. It wasn't like I couldn't do it, but I decided not to. Instead, I guess a spark of consciousness emerged, and I elected to turn myself into the police at night. I turned over my phone for digital evidence, gave the police the key to my apartment, and complied with everything they asked. I stayed with my mother for a few days afterwards, and even though I literally walked in and confessed, the police still had to ensure a crime happened. I would end up being arrested on the charge of aggravated criminal sexual abuse, which I truly was guilty of. I ended up spending a week and a half in jail before my grandparents paid bail. While in jail, I was in the sex offender ward of the jail, and it was there that I contemplated suicide for the first time. Obviously, I never carried through with it, though I do understand if you wish I did at this point. I wouldn't blame you. After being bailed out, my grandparents also hired a very good attorney for me. I was able to register for online classes at a nearby community college, got myself a factory job as well in the meantime. I began to see a therapist weekly and a psychiatrist every 3 months for the first time ever, and they were beyond helpful. I was given multiple prescriptions, which I still take daily, and I've never missed a dose. I also got evaluated by a sex offender expert who deemed me safe to interact with society. At the time, I scoffed at how easy it was to get such a result. Then, on the one day I happened to go to my college campus to register for the next semester's online classes, I ran into her, my victim. I saw something in her eyes that shook me to my core. There was fear. I had believed myself heartless, but to see the effects of what I had done flash across her face made my heart and soul break. I was a monster, free and loose in the world where I could easily repeat what had happened. Many members of my family who know the whole story have found ways to justify my actions, and for a time I was more than okay with that. At one point, I myself blamed the victim for what happened, and resented her for bringing so much trouble into my life. Eventually, my trial came around, and despite a brutal victim impact statement made by my victim's mother, my lawyer was able to get me a plea deal for only 24 months of probation, and I had to register as a sex offender. I won't deny that I was happy with my sentence, but then I listened to an episode or two of Timesuck and heard you speak about how light sentences are for sex offenders. I thought on it, and you're right. Realistically, I was still a danger and should have gotten at least some jail time, but no, only probation. I've come to understand that something is truly broken inside of me, but I don't know what. I've received a plethora of diagnoses, though I still know that there is some fundamental difference between my brain and a normal brain that has not been identified. I thought back to a time when I was younger, before I began to fill myself with hate and resentment. All I'd wanted to do was help people, and up until that point, I had only hurt and taken from innocent people. Though originally a physics major, I met with my academic advisor and switched to a mathematics major. I decided that I was going to help people in a way that used my talents to their fullest. I believe it would be inappropriate for someone with my history to be a psychologist interacting with people, so I came up with another way. Since that epiphany, I've dedicated myself to becoming a research statistician with a focus on criminal behavior, sexual violence, and abuse. I want to know why I would do such awful things and not feel anything when it happens. I want to stop people from hurting others like I did. I live with my flashbacks of what happened and the fear in my victim's eyes. I cringe at physical contact because it reminds me of what happened, of what I did. Last spring, I graduated with high honors and an associate's in mathematics. This fall, I started work on my bachelor's with a major in mathematical sciences and 3 minors, those being criminal justice, psychology, and sociology. After my bachelor's, I intend on pursuing a master's and doctorate as well. I'm well aware that nothing I do will make up for what I did, but I'm okay with that. I know there will always be people who hate me. There will always be people who will never forgive me. I don't blame them. They have every reason to. I truly believe that bad magic, and specifically Dan, has been able to finally break through to me on a number of things. I am not superior to anyone. I am not justified in what I did. It was wrong. I believe that if I never found all of you, I would have become the kind of person you write episodes about, and I may have had more than a single victim. You guys changed my life, and I hope that I can change other people's lives for the better now too. If bad magic is ever unsure of their impact on the world, please understand that through helping me see sanity and reason, you probably saved more people from falling victim to the evils that I once held within me. I'm okay with this message being read as a Timesucker update. I only ask you leave my name out. Feel free to research me if you don't believe me. Thank you for changing who I am and never, not even for a single moment, believe that you are too harsh or not merciful enough to the scum that you have as topics. They are scum, and it was your words about them that reached me when my family couldn't. Sincerely, Anonymous. Wow, man. Holy shit, Anonymous. I did look you up, and yeah, it all checks out. I don't hate you. I, of course, hate what you did, but I don't hate you. You've done what it feels like 99% of people who've done something like what you've done never do. And that's take true accountability, feel true remorse, be genuinely interested in turning your life around and take action towards that. I don't need to go into how damaging what you did was because you already know. And while just like you also know, nothing you can do can make the harm you caused, go away, can, undo it. You can choose to use that harm to motivate you to do so much good in the world, which it seems like you're doing. And that is so rare. And it seems genuine with you. So thanks for letting me know that this show helps. I know my big mouth pisses a lot of people off. I see the reviews. I read the emails I don't share here. Good to be reminded that sometimes my mouth, helps too. I wish you well, truly. I think with your backstory, you could end up helping a lot of people to not ever do what you did. You could stop a lot more future sexual abuse than I ever could. You can speak to those who have gotten lost in the incelisphere, right? That corner, that sick corner of the sick manosphere in a way I can't, because you can relate in a different way. You can reach people who are like how you used to be, and you can show them a better way. Make them understand how no one owes them shit. No one owes any of us shit. So thank you so much for being willing to share your story here. I shared it because I hope it helps somebody else. Hail Nimrod, everybody.
Thanks, time suckers. I needed that.
We all did.
Well, thank you for listening to another Bad Magic Productions podcast. Be sure and rate and review Timesuck if you haven't already. Unless you fucking hate it, then we have enough of that right now. Eat more than 3 oranges a day this week. Don't try and live on asparagus broth. Easy on the enemas. Always easy on the enemas. And keep on sucking.
Bad Magic Productions.
And now allow me to end on a very wise, very truthful excerpt from Chapter 18, Death in the Fast, from Dr. Linda Burfield Hazzard's incomparable book, Fasting for the Cure of Disease. Death under medical treatment, in the majority of instances, results from disease that is functional, not organic. In the experience of the writer, death in the fast never has occurred when merely functional disease was present, and never has resulted from abstinence from food, but was the inevitable consequence of obstruction by organic imperfection by the avenues through which the energy of the body is expressed. In this chapter, medical evidence in cases of death from alleged starvation is compared with first-hand knowledge obtained in applying the fast for the cure of disease, and from post-mortem examination of the bodies of patients who died while under treatment. The immediate cause of the cessation of life is discovered in the fact that the brain becomes unable, through disease or shock, to draw upon its reserve store of sustenance for structural maintenance. Some paralyzing influence prevents nourishment of nerve centers and shuts off the life current. No agent more destructive of both physical and mental functions exists than unreasoning fear, and it plays its part in accidental situations where food is denied, such as mine disasters, shipwrecks, and the like, since here mental suffering affects the physical balance and the cause of death lies in the conditions of the circumstances and not in the fact that the body is deprived of food. For in favorable surroundings, weeks and even months may pass ere death occur from lack of sustenance. It is questionable whether, in a conscious being not afflicted with organic defect, or not situated so that food cannot be supplied when hunger calls, death has ever resulted from starvation. Or in other words, from the exhaustion of brain food stored in body tissue. No conclusive evidence shows that this has ever happened. So there you go, meat sacks. Starvation has literally never killed anyone. Only fear. So don't be afraid and you won't die.